just be rejuvenated and look forward to what you have in store for us in the next school year. Lord, help us to remember to pause and to give thanks to you. You are our provider. And as we make preparations, Lord, help us to depend and trust on your resources, your strength, your wisdom, and your way. And it's in your name we pray. Amen. If you'll stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So I will now call to order the workshop meeting of the Cook County School Board on May 28th, 2024. I want to welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. And I don't see any members from the public. I think everybody here is school district folks. So we'll just jump right in, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Brosnan for the...
Hi, good morning. Hope everybody's doing well. Everybody had a great graduation. I know I was at Oakley. It was fantastic. And I was just going to say, I've been doing this for a long time. Graduation never gets old. It's always renewed every time to see students go through that milestone in life. It's a fantastic time. I'll also say that Thursday is the last day for students. I know there's a lot of students out there smiling at that, and families getting ready for summer. So today we have kind of a large book, but a quick agenda related to 3 items. One is the agenda itself, and second is an update on library media materials, and then an update on the budget. So without further ado, I'll kind of go into the items that are in the agenda itself. We do have a couple of celebrations, and my favorite, perfect attendance, will be given that evening. Our first discussion item is to appoint one board member and 1 citizen member to serve on the Value Adjustment Board. I would urge the board to have discussion on that. It's not a voted on item, but traditionally we decide that at the meeting. Next is to appoint 1 board member to serve as the FSBA Advocacy Committee representative, and 1 board member to serve as the Advocacy Committee alternate. Again, decided through collaboration at the meeting. Then we have no human resource action there presently posted. Then we have the public hearing on the family handbook and student code of conduct. And I would just kind of say, of course, there's a lot of information in here, but the biggest change has to do with the cell phone policy. So just a reminder to the board that the way that it's presently written for junior high students, it would be no use of cell phones from first bell to ending bell. That would include lunch and transition time between classes. At high school, it's from the starting bell to the ending bell, no cell phones with the exception of lunch. And that's the way the policy is written and the way it was advertised already. And that's kind of where we are. I do think that that's, I mentioned that specifically so that publicly we have given notice to people who are either in favor or not of that, so just making sure everybody knows.
And Keystone, you have that worked out since it's both.
Yes.
Okay. So that's clear.
Mr. Brodsky?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to clarify the junior. This is the first time I'm doing this. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear it.
Okay, I would want to talk about I'm not sure if I think there's a delay on my phone, but I was wanting to talk with the board about the junior high lunch and cell phones. I want to clarify the reason the board felt like we didn't need cell phones in the junior high lunch.
Go ahead.
Are you asking a question or are you making a statement, Michelle?
No, I want to know what the discussion was about the junior high not having a cell phone at lunch. For clarification for me, I was a junior high teacher, and those lunches as well can be as big and as chaotic as a high school. So I just want to clarify, I've gotten several emails about it and heard from several teachers, and I just wanted to know our reasoning behind junior high not having them at lunch.
Because
So
I think,
are you advocating that you want us to allow cell phones at lunch for junior high?
I want clarification as to why we're doing that with junior high.
because I thought we discussed that we wanted the kids to interact with each other and we didn't really hear how loud it was. And then I think some of the difference between the junior high and the high school is that high school has jobs, more responsibilities, etc. And it was like a stepping stone to something you look forward to as well, I think, if I remember correctly.
And for me personally, it's a maturity issue. You're talking about 13 and 14-year-olds versus 15 through 18-year-olds, and we want responsible use of cell phones. So for me personally, it's about maturity and age and maturity. I would hope that students in high school would be more responsible and appropriate with cell phone use during lunchtime.
So then, Mr. Brodsky, I agree with both of the board members. Will there be I can't say a retraining, but some kind of a way to get or help junior high schools try to figure out how to talk to each other in the cafeteria? They have not been doing that. Will principals have discussions about, I don't know. It's almost like you take a cell phone away, and they don't really have those kind of skills sitting face-to-face anymore, probably.
But how many junior high students have cell phones to begin with? I don't think this is teaching them anything new.
Oh, most, all.
All right, well, thanks for the clarification.
So to answer the question, Ms. Hanson, yes, there'll be a retraining of individuals. We'll meet with students in small groups at the beginning of the school year to cover this, as well as many other discipline-related topics.
Yes.
And in addition, we'll also be problem-solving among admin staff about how to handle the change with that. Just like any policy change, there's an implementation phase. So obviously, it's going to take some strategies related to staff at the school in order to implement the policy because of the policy change. So that happens, the retraining happens during the summer for admin, and for students, it starts in the first week of school. There's additional requirements under the statute related to training of students when it comes to Fortify Florida. A lot of times they slip in obscure wording into statutes, and the obscure wording here to recognize is training students within the first 5 days of school in Fortify Florida. That's new in the statute, so we'll be doing a lot of training once school starts.
So I was thinking with the sixth graders, you have the up-and-coming sixth grade and the academies. Will you do it there?
Yeah, it's
Well, the sixth grade kids who come to seventh grade, what do they call that program?
like an orientation program.
Web.
Web at junior high and the high school is Link.
But they wouldn't be experiencing a change because elementary students don't have cell phones bell to bell already. So it won't be anything new for them. And I can tell you, spend time with a lot of junior high students because I have one. They've not forgotten how to talk to each other. They use cell phones, but they still communicate. And I think
Usually at the same time.
they do, exactly. So I'm not real concerned about students not knowing what the expectations are at lunch, but I think it's obviously clear that we need to be very clear with them what the expectations are as far as self-control and noise control.
If anything, I think there may be some conflict in the high schools because there are some schools where the cafeteria does not support cell phone use. They're not able to use their cell phones. And getting those messages from mom or dad or whatever might have to happen outside of the building. And here again, there will be a number of questions as this progresses.
I think the training is great. maybe I'm out of touch with how many junior high students have cell phones, but obviously a base training is good, but we shouldn't have to put that much effort into human contact. I mean, people are gonna know how to talk to each other. I expect that.
Okay, moving on. Our first item, the minutes of the school board. Payment of our annual membership dues for FSBA. That's followed by the personnel consent agenda. As a reminder, this is the month where we reappoint annual contract employees as well as administrators during this. It'll be updated as we progress through that this week. Next is K-12 academic services, out-of-state and overnight travel. Pretty standard item there.
There were a couple there that I thought would be fun to chaperone.
Well, there's no shortage of people going
No
places.
shortage of chaperones either, unfortunately.
That's for sure. Daily hours for teachers and students, each year we're required to post what the daily hours are, and you can see those daily hours on the following sheet.
Hey, I have a question.
Sure.
Per the state law, we have to do earlier or later times?
In 26.
26,
So
okay.
right now, we've got a task force together to see how that will impact. Up to a large degree, the timing of schools is due to transportation, getting students there. And so we're going to have to flip those times in order to be in compliance with the statute. We're studying that now, and once that's formed, we'll go ahead and we'll advertise. We'll have that advertised for a good 9 months prior to it actually happening.
Are we going to advertise that this is state statute?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
I've
think-
already had so many people
I think-
contact me about this thinking it was us that were doing it.
I think people will, anytime there's a change, sometimes change is challenging. And so that'll happen, but they'll have plenty of time. And I think the plan too would be to market it through all of the school communications out also, school newsletters and all of that. So the goal would be there can't be anybody going into next summer, not this summer, but next summer that doesn't know when school actually starts.
So you're looking at the 25-26 school year, not 26-27 for start?
Yeah, I thought it started 26.
26, 27 school year.
27.
Okay.
Because
26-27.
St. John's has already been doing this.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of people hear the statute and then they say, you're doing this now. And it's like, no, we have a few years to do it and plan it and do it right, which is take your time and do it right.
I just didn't know if we were gonna slowly trickle the times, or if we were just gonna go full on 9:30 start time.
Well, there'll be plenty of discussion related to this topic, because I'm sure it'll be an interesting one, to say the least, but we have more time to plan, so.
Okay. I just wanna make sure that when we do advertise it, we emphasize that, because I've already gotten
Yeah.
calls about
Well, I think some of the challenges are with if you move back from high school times, it creates a challenge with families, with students that participate in athletics and those kinds of things.
jobs that they provide for their family. I mean, some of them work to
Dinner.
actually,
Things of that nature. Okay, secondary summer school programs.
Was there a question, Ms. Hanson?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. Many counties are starting the busing update next year, like half. They're not tackling it all at once, as Ms. Skipper said. Has there been some thought to trying to meet this halfway each year, or are we just going to do all of it in 1 year?
Yeah, we're studying that right now, and we look forward to bringing information to the board relative to the plan in future years.
she's meaning next year, say, instead of 8:30, instead of 7, do 8:30.
No, I understand that. No, I understand that. I'm thinking, sorry, history, thinking back to when we attempted to do year-round school at a few of the schools, but not all of the schools. And that was not very effective. It's an excellent
Well,
thought, not very.
There's also the challenge of the funds for new buses, I'm imagining. Maybe that's why they do it on this photo, so they don't buy them all in 1 year.
What, We shouldn't have to change the number of buses. I don't think. I mean, we're just changing the times of when we're picking up the kids.
So we use the buses for all 3 levels, is that correct, Mr. Brodsky?
That's correct, you use the buses for all 3 levels. The reason why it's stagger stacked now is because the same buses are used in order to do that. They're rotated, of course, because we do have more buses than we have bus routes, and they're rotated out to keep the mileage equal, but at the same time, anytime that you move the time frame, well, anytime you make any change, there's a challenge that goes with that. I know that Mr. Crawford's studying that right now, and as soon as a plan comes forward, we'll bring it to the board. Okay, next is the student progression plan. You can see that we are required under statute to have a student progression plan. Not very many changes in this student progression plan. I sent it out to you early. You can see the changes are on the third page, and they're minor changes to be in compliance. But the way, the outlook of this is much more user-friendly, but it's the same information that's been redistributed to make it more user-friendly. And I
So, Mr. Brodsky, I had 3 questions about the student progression plan revisions.
Sure.
The first one is page 43. When it comes to EOCs, we've changed the language. It now states that 30% of students overall grade from the EOC. Prior to that, we had calculations as to how teachers should do that. So I am assuming in Synergy there must be a box where they put, I just need some help with this because I have had a lot of questions in the last 2 weeks from not only teachers but parents about how that 30%, so if a kid gets a 5 on an EOC and it's 30% of their entire grade, what grade are we putting in a box somewhere in Synergy to either calculate that for them? I was confused on this even when I was teaching high school, so I would like some clarification. If a kid gets a 3, a 4, or a 5, are they getting 100% of that 30% because they have mastered the material? How are we handling EOCs?
So the statute provides for a grade for your EOC, and then it's calculated in Synergy. The EOC counts.
It's 30%, right, of the grade.
Right.
But it doesn't, are teachers putting, if you get a 3, putting an 80 in that 30%? If it's a 4, are they putting a 90?
So there's a conversion chart which does that we can send to you, that tells teachers if a student receives X score in the course and X score for the EOC, it actually converts the chart out. And I'll have Ms. Watt send that to you.
I have seen the conversion chart, but what I'm asking is a big difference. I don't know if anybody's familiar with mastery grading, but mastery grading says that if a student has mastered all the material, they should have an A. That's what mastery grading is. So if a student gets a 4 and has mastered the material at or above grade level, are they getting the full 30%?
What does the chart say?
They get a 99.
They get a 99 according to the conversion chart.
Because I don't know, there is teacher confusion on this as well. I've had questions, I couldn't find the answer as to how we were doing it. So I guess what I'm saying about that is, it used to take, like end of course exams, we don't do this for end of course exams, just EOCs, correct?
End of course exams, aren't they?
Yes, but there's more than that, Mary, in high school. Everybody gives an end exam of the year.
Right. But the EOC is the end of course exam.
Right.
But
The
there's
only
25
difference
other
is,
courses. For instance, you don't take EOC in English, you take a FAST test. Is the FAST test calculated in as an end of course exam?
no. Only an end of course exam is calculated in as the 30%.
So no one else should be using this formula at all unless you have an end of course exam.
Correct.
So I think this is something that needs some clarification, honestly.
Okay. We can certainly provide clarification to folks that may not. What was the
The
second?
other thing was on page 65 about reporting student progress. We have listed as statute 1002.20, parents shall be apprised at regular intervals. Are our regular intervals just to satisfy state statute, interims and report cards? Is there any clarification as to what a regular interval is in Clay County?
It's the interim.
Because 1003.02 requires reports to be made at regular intervals. And I do know some teachers actually don't put grades in regularly, so what do we mean by a regular report? Is it just the interim?
It's the interim and the report card, although I will tell you that, grading is a topic that will be brought forward next year, for all involved, both administrators and teachers involved. I know that you and I have had discussion about this particular topic and the need for teachers to enter grades routinely and regularly so that parents have the opportunity to make course corrections if the child is not there. So we totally get it, and we are on top of that issue.
And then the last item was, no, I think that's on C11, we're not there yet, never mind, sorry.
Okay, so now any other questions on this? Okay, now we're on to the next item, which is the interagency agreement with the Department of Military Affairs and the district. This is for FLICA. This is a routine item that we brought forward every year. If you've not been to a FLICA graduation, you really should see that. It is quite amazing and life-changing for individuals. This is a long-standing agreement between the two entities, Clay County. There are teachers teach out there. I think there's 6, if I'm not mistaken, 6 teachers and 1 support person that work out there on Camp Landing or at Camp Landing. Next is dual enrollment articulation agreement with St. John's River State College. And that's for our dual enrollment program. Many students participate in dual enrollment. It's a fantastic way to earn your AA degree before you even graduate from high school. I know that many high schools probably celebrated that, whichever high school you were attending. Next is the affiliation agreement between Clay County Schools and Western Governors University. Again, this is an agreement with the university in order to place interns and hopefully hire more teachers. C11 is the professional learning catalog. The state has went ahead and they had a new template that they brought forward, so to be in compliance with the state template. That's why you see that item written the way that it is. Many of the same items from the previous format that the state required have been revamped to their new format. Was that the one you had a question on, Ms. Hanson? Yep. Ms. Hanson? Okay, I'll move forward. She said C11, but C11 is the learning catalog.
Say it a little louder. Miss Hanson?
Ms. Hanson, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there. I'm in Illinois, so there's some kind of lag at this house. But my question is, when visiting schools over the last year and a half and talking to different teachers and not just my friends, there has been a lot of suggestion changes that people would like to see, not so much with the offerings of professional development, but the teachers were wondering if we could do a lot more differentiated in service, meaning people who have been around a long time, more like, I guess, master teacher in service areas where teachers can talk with other teachers in that professional setting versus being taught or things they're already familiar with. So they talked about, is there a way to differentiate by experience for teachers who have been around a long time?
So I know that we send out a professional learning survey to gather all that information from stakeholders, and that's partly what's used in order to create the sessions that are there. But certainly, they have the choice of which one they attend, so they can attend any one that they believe benefits them.
I don't know, I think I'm just at a lack of words for this because I know a lot of the same things are offered over and over because we have so many new teachers.
If there's a particular topic that they would like to see, they not only have the chance to put it onto the survey itself, but they can also email Dr. Shepherd.
I don't think it's a topic. I think they're saying even though you have a topic, if you could divide new teachers out from master teachers, so there'd be a different level of professional development.
We can, yes, we can certainly do that, Ms. Hanson. We can have conversations with the specialist about differentiating the way it's presented. And we try to do that throughout the year with the collaboratives and have some sessions geared towards teacher leaders while others are specifically for those teachers.
Yeah.
We do recognize that there is a continuum of growth with our teachers. So we can certainly have conversation about that.
Well, thank you.
Next is 7 Mindsets, life skills, character education, and to build resiliency. Remember we did a presentation either last month or the month before.
Mr. Brodsky, I know I'm probably being a pain, but can I get clarification on 7 Mindsets real quick? Did we say we are no longer going to use Suite 360, that it will all be included in 7 Mindsets?
That is true. The state requirement under 6A 1.094124, the part about mental and emotional health, substance use and abuse, health education, which would include vaping, child trafficking prevention and cyberbullying, all of that would be covered under 7 Mindsets.
And where can people view the new videos, and how are we going to give parents notification as to when and where their kids will see these videos? We've talked about this before.
Yeah.
If we're going to do cyberbullying, we might want to let parents know if we're going to talk about drug abuse or suicide or depression, we should probably get parental notification for sensitive topics. When will that happen? At the beginning of the school year or prior to the?
Prior to the event itself. Schools put that out through their school newsletter typically and communicate with parents, and we got some really good examples. In fact, that was the one that you sent me that you had received. So yeah, obviously we're going to communicate.
So like, are they given the 7 topics and then allowed to opt their children out?
Required.
It's the required education from the state of Florida under the statute.
It is required, but if their child had committed suicide and they didn't want them to sit in the suicide training that we do, is there a way for a parent to opt out of this required SEL training?
I don't believe there's a way out of the required training based on the statute.
Okay, so like, how will a parent know if they don't want their child to watch this suicide training? How will they know if we don't give them specific dates and times of when we're showing?
We will give them.
I mean, Florida law says we notify parents. I don't see, are we giving them a list at the end of the year of the dates and the times of what we're doing?
Yes, we will communicate with the parents prior to the event occurring.
Do we send a letter home? Are they allowed to opt, they're not allowed to opt out of anything?
Not according to the statute.
We're required to train it. Are they required to keep their kids in it, is what I'm asking.
Is what you understand the statute.
It is required.
Okay.
But if a child is absent that day, they will not be participating, and we don't go back
Right.
and say, okay, now you have to sit and watch this video, correct?
Correct.
So if a parent is not allowed to opt out, they can help that child be absent for that particular period of the day, because they are notified ahead of time.
So are we saying in state law we have to force parents and their kids to participate, or does the law say that we must teach it? We must cover those topics?
So we must teach you, we must cover those topics, and there's no opt-out provision. If a parent wants to opt out, by not having their child attend that, they can do so, just like a
So it's
parent.
kind of conflicting with other state statutes that allow parental rights and parental choices, I guess. It doesn't allow parental opt-out.
We're always going to honor what the parent wants to do. If the parent chooses to not send their child to school, then they choose to not send their child to that program.
But they will know ahead of time when their child's seeing it.
Yep.
So we're gonna see this video on Friday, and we'll have an opportunity to know that.
Right, it'll be communicated out when those topics will be covered.
If they read the communication.
Well, I'm not worried about that, Ms. Lola. When I was teaching, it wasn't too long ago, I don't know of sending letters home before I was teaching Sweet 360. So I understand that everybody won't read it. I just wanna make sure that we're doing it, to give parents that choice. And also, when will the videos be accessible for parents to look at?
It's,
Well, I mean, as soon as it's approved, we will, talk to Seven Mindsets about having it accessible. My office has always been an open door, as Ms. Gilhousen knows. I've also had parents that have come in and have viewed the videos. They've gone to schools and viewed the videos.
So it will be available.
Yes.
Correct.
All right, I guess that's it.
All right, so Ms. Hanson, as we move forward in the agenda, if you'll let Mr. Broski present on the item, and then we'll call for questions, okay?
We have a delay, Ms. Gilhousen. I can't tell, the YouTube is way behind, and so I thought he was done.
oh yeah, if they're watching it at the same time, it's like, it's super weird. It's like 5-7 seconds delay.
I would mute the YouTube and only listen through the phone.
Yeah, that'd probably be easier for you.
Okay.
All right, we're on the health service agreement with the Department of Health. This is the agreement between the school district and the Department of Health of Clay County. As you know, they inspect our clinics at our schools, as well as provide other services for us. This is the contract that does that. Next is the proposed allocation changes for 24-25 and the needs there related to that. The proposed allocation changes for 23-24. You can see those there. The climate and culture one, you can see the transition there. Next is the monthly financial reports. Then the budget amendment reports. And the deletion of certain item report, which is there every year, every month. Next is the bid renewal through the RFP process for ice cream and frozen novelties. It's delicious.
Do we get samples at the board meeting?
I think we tried that last year, didn't we?
Next is the RFP for temporary substitute and other staffing services. This is the RFP that the district went through since November to come to this conclusion.
Can I ask a question? Are you done with that?
Yes, I
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
You know how normally they say impact on budget on the sheet that we have when we go through and look at the agenda? It's blank. Is there a way that we can get the total cost of Kelly Services?
We could get a
I
total
see the
cost.
chart that they have included on page 12 that talks about some of the hourly rates were like $13 and then there was a markup.
Right.
Could somebody explain that to me and then maybe what the total cost of using Kelly Services is?
You want to explain that?
Yes. The hourly rate is the rate that the employee gets paid.
Through the chair.
He's just saying you might want to come closer so she
Can
can.
you hear me, Michelle, Ms. Hanson?
Yes, I can.
Okay. The hourly rate is what the employee gets paid through Kelly Services. The markup rate is for their fee to us for providing the services.
And so when does Florida go to $15 an hour? And because that chart is at $13,
Correct.
starting at 13?
So Florida goes to 15 in 2 more years.
Okay,
Now, our school system is already at 15, because all Florida school systems are at 15. But Kelly Services does not have to pay the 15 because they're not a Florida school system.
well, I would say maybe part of the problem with our substitute problem is the 13, if you have a bachelor's and we're making $14 an hour, this might be an area, if we continue to struggle with substitutes, that we need to really look at that. Do you have any idea how much the total funds were sent out to Kelly Services in any year, like last year, this year?
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Legucco has that, and those rates are an increase. They're a $1 increase over last year. And we were able to do the increase because Kelly Services actually reduced their markup. So we're able to give the employees an increase in the rate to help attract people, but it's not going to cost us more because of the markup.
Because I was looking, if you're a certified teacher, I think you were making just $15 an hour. So I don't know, I think in the future, we probably need to relook if we have a continual shortage of substitute teachers. It may be because of the salary schedule for them. That's what I was suggesting.
That is a struggle. I agree. It is a struggle, but it's also trying to keep it within a reasonable code. Did you get the total?
About $3.5 million a year.
It's about 3.5 million.
Ms. Trotman, I think this is a 5-year contract, and you're saying that the minimum wage increase happens 2 years from now. If we lock in at this rate,
We can change that at any month. We
but
bring
so the
forward
cost would be
time.
passed along to us?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Correct. So, and we,
And so will the whole scale go up then starting at 15, or will we just keep everybody at 15 when that happens mid-contract?
I think you would still want to prorate each section according to what job they're doing and according to what level of education they have, like it is now.
You're right. I appreciate it, Ms. Trotman.
You're welcome.
So that 3.2, that's yearly?
Yes.
Annual?
Remember, 2,900 teachers, and they all have 10 days of leave.
No, I know, it just seems pretty,
It's a lot,
yeah.
no doubt, but they're entitled to the leave, so.
No, I know, but I'm also thinking about how we still struggle with substitute teachers. So that's why I'm, in my mind, thinking,
To pay more.
well, I mean, you have, I know with resource, they cover each other's classes a lot of the times. And then you have, we have other issues. Anyways, I'm just thinking out loud and I'll just,
No, there's multiple issues. Multiple. I mean,
for our teacher's sake, I know it is a struggle if you're there all day with an extra class on top of your class. So I just, anyways, even for a couple periods, I know that.
Okay, next is Synergistic Energy Conservation Saving Program. So this is actually a reduction, a 14% reduction in cost. And it has to do with implementing remote control thermostats in portable classrooms so that the cost could be reduced for that. So about $11 million in cost avoidance over the last 8 years. It's about 1.37 per year. And the cost of the contract is $286,000.
So we want to put these, is the district going to control the thermostats and these portables? Is that how it works?
Yeah, you're able to, just like the district is able to control all of the thermostats across the
building.
district. That's how they control the cost, as it turns out, when people aren't there.
Okay, as long as, okay, so it's not like they're teaching in the classroom and you control the temperature at that point? Okay,
So
because I know sometimes,
So what we've done, this was a challenge, if you recall, 8 years ago, when this happened. It was a big, I'm going to call it an uprising relative, and Miss Gilhouse is shaking her head. So we kind of tweaked that to manage those kinds of things, but there are folks that leave the air conditioning on over the weekend and at night, and so the ability to shut those off.
So I will say, Mr. Broski, being an ELA teacher in a portable, I worry a lot about my books. So the humidity control
Yep.
overnight, if the air's not running, is something to consider, because that's a lot of money to lose in your library if your books get warped.
Well, and I just also want to make sure that it was just for those times, because portables don't have the insulation, like
Right.
the inside, and I know,
I personally
I'm not going
purchased a
to sweat.
separate dehumidifier for my portable classroom that has kept the humidity out of the room, and I'm not sure if maybe that's something we should consider for portables if we're gonna shut the air off overnight.
So this is not a change in practice at all
Okay.
from the past 8 years.
So is it shut off, or is it just the temperature?
It's turned down.
Okay.
It's not shut off altogether. It is turned down. And that was the concern when we went through this 8
Correct.
years ago.
Right,
And it would be frustrating because originally they put in sensors in the portable classrooms so that if you left and the sensor didn't sense any movement, they would turn the air up, let's say. I mean, they would raise the temperature during August. And when you would come back then from resource or lunch,
maybe.
it would be up, and then it would take a while for it to get down. Meanwhile, you have 26 sweaty kids that just came in from PE, and they're going, it's hot in here. Yes, it is. That we resolved those issues.
I just want to make sure, because if
Patiently.
people hear this,
But
I know
it's
Yeah,
not, it's
no
not
change in
changing the, it's
practice.
not changing the practice.
just wanted
It's
to
sort of like, it's
clarify
been
that.
tweaked enough that, yeah. And yeah, there's still going to be air conditioning units that go out. It
Right.
happens, you
Yeah.
know? After they sit for the summer and try putting them on again in August, we will have that same problem every year. And it's frustrating as all get out, but it's one of those situations that happens at home as well as at work, yeah.
So the next 6.
Wait, Mr. Borowski,
Yes, ma'am.
are we saying that we don't turn the air off at any time, we just turn it up or down? Because
It's,
I was under the impression when the portables were not being used that the service was off.
wouldn't be totally off.
Not totally.
So when we come in the portable classroom in the morning and it's absolutely freezing, like what time do they, because I will say to the board that the biggest problem as a teacher in the portable for me was when it was really, really cold out. It took the portable a long time to heat up. So are they turning the heat on for the portable teachers prior to getting there?
It can be, so we've implemented these thermostats, not in every portable at this point in time. We've only done several schools, and this is the anticipation of finishing all of the portables with these remote control thermostats. So it might be that the ones that were cold in the winter did not have the remote control thermostat in it at that point in time, so it didn't have a start time before the kids got there.
And so the goal is to have the thermostats in every portable?
Correct.
The remote control ones?
Correct.
Okay, and we don't turn them off all night long
No,
anymore?
the teachers have
We
the
just adjust
ability
the temperature?
during school to adjust the temperature to what they need, and then in the evenings, it's just, we raise the temperature to keep the electricity costs down. We do not turn them off.
All right, so like we might turn it to 80 at night, something like that?
Correct.
I just wanted to make sure teachers still
Yeah.
had control. That's all I
Yeah.
wanted to make
They
clear.
do, they still have.
Because I'm not about to
Okay,
have a.
so the next 6 items are all related to the sheriff's department or law enforcement. The first one is the Guardian program. You can see the MOU there, signed by the sheriff for the training related to guardians.
Well, there's a multitude of Guardian programs, and
Yeah,
honestly, that's my favorite.
yeah.
I think it's very important to have it.
So next is the placeholder for the interlocal with Green Cove Police. Green Cove Police covers Green Cove Springs Junior High and Charles E. Bennett, and their cost is $155,000 for that. Next is the interlocal with Orange Park PD, and they cover 3 schools, Orange Park Junior, Orange Park Elementary, Grove Park Elementary, and their cost is $260,000. Interlocal's being worked on. The next are 3 agreements related to the conversion to the sheriff's office, and I know that our attorney's been working hard on this particular issue, so I'm going to turn it over to him.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Brodsky. So staff's been working hard on this as well. So right now, as it stands, we have several agreements we're bringing to y'all. Now, originally, when we had the discussion with the Sheriff's Department, under the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas Act, we as a school district can contract directly with the Sheriff's Department, but based on some requirements that the Sheriff's Department and the County Commission had, the County Commission has a role in this process. I briefed each of y'all on that individually. So going forward, we have the final stages of this. The county attorney has the long-term funding agreement that she's reviewing. We made some additional changes over the weekend. So we were all working hard to make sure that this was adjusted. There were some changes that we made last week to make sure that we were not bringing budget amendments to the board. You know, as we go through, as y'all know, that can be challenging, you know, so. But I think we're at a point now where we can move forward. The operating agreement is completed. I think we had some minor changes, but really we're just waiting on the finalized agreement with the county commission. So the way that will work, just as it did last time, y'all will execute that agreement. Y'all's board, if y'all decide to approve that agreement, the county commission will approve it as well. And I think I had that reversed. Actually, the county commission will go first. It'll come to us. We will, if y'all decide to approve it, it will be approved. We'll sign it. We'll execute that, starting going forward. So it's been a lot of work, but I think we have a good handle on it. There are some changes to allow for somewhat of a cushion, because we don't want to be in a scenario where if there's a car that needs to be repaired or replaced, that we're bringing that to y'all mid-year, because that could have an impact on the budget. But I think we're at a finalized place. I think that's accurate. But yeah, we just have a lot of agencies involved, so we have a lot of government entities involved. So that's kind of where we're at. So I don't know if there are any questions, Madam Chair, about that, or.
So 3 separate, just to kind of give you the big picture, 3 separate agreements. One is for funding, like how much does it cost, et cetera. The other is for operational things. There's so many things related to the operational day-to-day services. Like, for example, we're required as a district to be able to document the hours of officers on campus. So we currently have a system to do that. So when we get audited, we can say, here you go. Here's in essence, the sign-in sheets for police, et cetera. That's the operational agreement. And the other is the transition of property. So 3 separate agreements. The operational one is directly with the sheriff's office. The funding and the transition is directly with the Board of County Commissioners. So that's why there's challenges when 3 groups get involved and why it's to this point. But I feel good that we're at this point, and I think we're moving forward.
Sure, Madam Chair, if I may, just one more point as well. The board gave us some direction as well as to include charter schools. We have reached out to the charter schools and kind of gotten their input on this. So far, I don't believe we've gotten any response. They may be making a different decision as far as that, but that would require a separate agreement between the board and each of the charter schools. So right now, in the operating agreement, there's some legal language in there that would allow for some flexibility, but right now I think the charter schools, we reached out some time ago and have not heard any affirmative. So we gave them kind of a deadline we need to know so we can calculate that to the budget. So the budget that's being brought forward is really the finalized with the work that we've gone into it. And just one more, just add, the property transfer agreement actually is also with the county as well, because the property actually will go from our books to the county. That includes, rifles, ammunition, cars, vehicles, all those sensitive items. So.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Are we giving all of the cars over, or is it true that some of the guardians will be keeping cars?
That's a good question. I believe in the operating agreement we allow, there's some flexibility there. I'd have to look at the final version we've had. Actually, Bryce and I were joking. At one point, she sent me an email over the weekend saying, what version of what agreement are we on? Because we had so many different versions circulating. Bryce, do you recall what the final on that was?
We're 50.
50.
50 cars going.
And
We will
how many do we
retain
have?
some of them for our lead guardians.
Yeah, so how many do we have before? 60?
Total, I don't have an exact number, but we'll be keeping 5.
Keeping five.
Over 60.
And Mr. Skipper, this was, obviously, the sheriff's department was involved in this, discussion. They did their own evaluation of our property and kind of picked what they felt could transfer over. So they've been very, very involved in that process. So I think it was about 50 that they reached, and felt that they could use for their fleet. So, yes, ma'am, absolutely. Are there any other questions about that in particular? And again, I'll just say again, y'all as a board have done great work with this, and we're the only county in Florida that has gone one way and now we're going in a different direction. So obviously there's a lot of pressure on all the attorneys to get this right, so we appreciate y'all's patience. And I don't know if Ms. Hanson, anyone else had the questions. So.
We're all set.
Okay, next is the security lighting at Charles E. Bennett. And that's followed by security lighting at Doctor's Inlet, which are all replacements. Next is the change order for Clay High's gymnasium renovations, followed by Orange Park Junior High roof repair, and the final completion of the HVAC replacement at Middleburg High School, and pre-qualification of contractors. So with that completes the actual agenda items. Next, we have a presentation by Jennifer Collins and Cindy Johnson related to library materials. At the last board workshop, board member asked for additional clarification as to how that would be implemented, and several questions related to that. And so we have a presentation here in order to bring that forward.
We can't hear you. We're
We're up to Ms. Collins.
Okay, Ms. Collins.
Mr. Brodsky?
Yes.
In this way, I cannot see the presentation.
We can send a copy.
It's not attached.
Is it on YouTube? But it'll be delayed?
I did have it, as of now, I haven't seen anything, but you're saying it will be on YouTube?
I don't know.
Miss Watt will send you a copy. Okay,
Good.
go right ahead.
Good morning. How was everybody? Good. We had a good long weekend. All right. Well, we are here. Dr. Johnson and Susie, Hannah with me. We are here this morning to give an update of where we are with our procedures on library media. And I know there's a lot of questions that are some discussion points, but if we can get through the whole presentation and then we can address those at the end. So again, this is just meant to give you all an update of where we are at on our end with procedures following the policy that was updated during the May 2nd board meeting. So of course, I'll talk about this a little bit more in a minute. Parental rights have been a big piece guiding this work. We've had some board-approved community standards that are located in our challenge policy that we all worked on. Parents, again, are going to choose the level of library access. We're going to talk more about that, remind you about the levels of access and how that will work with technology and our Synergy program, and also our documents that are now posted on our library media webpage. So the next slide talks about the library book challenge process, and this was brought and given to you all. In fact, I think Ms. Skipper, you said that this was so helpful. I'm a super visual person. So this kind of summarizes our library book challenge process that you already have. So if we get a complaint, we have the district preview committee, which includes the chief academic officer, the supervisor of instructional resources, and then our district library media specialist. And they look, does it violate 847? Yes, it's automatically removed, right? The other side is we have some that are books that we've received that are meritless, and we can give a few examples of those that we've received over the years, I think like Arthur or something like that. And so if it's meritless, then that goes there. But if there is some question using our community standards that we have established, then that goes to our team, our statutory compliance team, which then consists of the people that I mentioned, but also pulling in a school media specialist, and as we talked about before, each board member appointing a person from their area to give that wide variety and perspective to this as well. And then that committee would meet, they would use the community standards, and they would decide to remove it, leave it as is, or flag it as that parental advisory status. So then, the bottom talks about the appeals process. If we were to get an appeal, we have 10 days, the superintendent sends a notice, and then, as a reminder, the school board is not endorsing that content or talking about the content or the subject matter. You guys would just be endorsing, okay, we followed all of these procedures as said in our policy. So then moving on. So we've talked a lot about this, the library access forms. And so if you just click onto the next slide. So again, the basis of this policy was to make sure that our parents have rights, right? So that we acknowledge that parents are the decision makers for their child, and that Clay County District Schools supports that parent's right of choice. We know that each family views book matter and content differently, and so that we want to make sure that parents have that choice to choose the level of library access that best fits their particular child. So just to review really quick, the general access provides access to check out all the books except for the parental advisory books in secondary. The unlimited access provides secondary students access to all books, including those flagged as parental advisory. Our limited access limits any certain titles. So like there's an option, parents can pick certain titles that they wouldn't want their child to have access to. And of course, no access. And then the daily email, which we'll show you in a minute how that will work on Synergy as well, so they can also get the daily email. And I know I joked last time about how I've like trapped in this daily email thing. So I'm so excited to see the updates of how I get my, option changed for next year. So these options again will be available on Synergy right at the beginning of the year, but then also through those flyers I know we had handed out last time that we made that explains all the different levels of access, and so that will be provided to parents as well. So, on to the next slide, you're going to get to see, and I have Ethan here and his department who have been working really hard on this. And so this is an example, so 24-25 of what will happen. So on the landing page here, it will give our parent right information right here, and actually a website that they can get more information as well. And so the parents must complete all the fields, and so they're going to have some required fields with that asterisk, and so then they'll have to hit continue. And so then the next slide will have where it'll describe all of the levels of access that that they'll pick from. And it kind of differentiates, right, K to 8, 9 to 12 because of the parental flagged books, the parental advisory status books. So we'll give all of that. They'll have to come down here and they will have to check which access that they get on the bottom. And then on the next slide, and this is where I was most excited about, right, is about the daily email, or they do not want a daily email. And note that they can change this preference at any time. So they can go back and they can change to the email, like I would have liked to see, and I'm sure there's probably a way, I just didn't explore it long enough, but they can also go back and change the access or add titles, during the year as well. And yes, so now we have a video that will show you how it's going to work.
It has sound too.
Okay, we can't hear.
Parent preferences in the online registration section of Parent View. And that will be starting in the 24-25 school year. Parental preferences. Select that. We have the welcome screen. And if we need more information about parental preferences and parental rights. We have a link on the interjection section. We're going to hit continue, and we're going to go through the screens. These are the students that we have that are attached to our parents, and we're going to put in our electronic signature and proceed, save and continue. You can see that we have our existing address, and continue to save and continue through the parent information. And then when we get to students, this is where we'll be able to select the preferences for each individual student. If we have multiple students, then we'll see them listed here. Going to go ahead and edit this student's selections. Here are the address for this particular student, and then here's where we'll be able to select the preferences for this student. Here it defines what each access level is. If we want more information for K through 8, we have a link for more information there. Same thing for grades 9 through 12. We can click there for more information. Down below, we're going to select the level of access they want for this particular child. And then we also have the option of signing up for a daily email. If a student has any items checked out through Destiny, then a daily email will be sent out for that particular child. This is the current school of enrollment. Make sure that's correct. We've completed the preferences section for that child, so we're going to save and continue. We're going to review our selections. As we can see, we've chosen general access and not to receive an email. And I'm going to say I have reviewed it and submit that selection. We, of course, can always change what we've selected by going back through that same online registration for parental preferences.
So that is just a video to show you how it will work, but there will be a parent video made as well. I think that.
Good morning, One Clay.
Parent voices. There will be a video made though to help parents. I believe Mrs. Hanson had brought a video or shown a video from another district in the Panhandle. And so we would have a video made for parents too, if they would like to see and be able to walk through it. Ethan,
With a better voiceover.
Ethan, do you have anything to?
Oh, that was pretty good.
I was just gonna say, where did you get that amazing?
Can I ask a quick question? If they don't choose something, does it bounce them, does it say, no, you have
It
to
wouldn't let
choose
them go on,
something?
they would.
That's what
they
I,
have
oh,
to.
perfect. So they have to choose something.
That's right.
Got it. Thank you.
I have a question though too about that, because I thought we discussed that, before, like, when they first came, or the beginning of the school year, how you have to do your, all your forms and everything for
Correct.
like your,
That's what
the
that
clinic
is.
and all that stuff,
That's
right? So are they not going to be able to move forward until they click that?
For all of those.
Okay, that's what I wanted to confirm.
Yes.
Okay.
So everything's done on there now. All right. So Susie is going to talk about the purchasing plan.
So moving forward, we do have a new lens that our media specialists are working under. And one positive thing that has really happened from this is the media specialists are now talking together about books that they want to purchase. So it's more of a collaborative effort instead of each school library just purchasing what they feel their needs are. So this past spring, our elementary media specialists worked with a local book vendor, which is a positive because they can get us preview copies of so many, in this case, nonfiction titles, because our nonfiction collection was a little weak when it came to copyright year. So they worked with the local book vendor and were able to review everything, physical copies of the book, and then once they received the book, if they found something in it they could still return it to the vendor. So that's a nice relationship that we have there. Our junior high and high schools collaboratively met and, reviewed 30 titles, new titles that they thought their students would like to have in the library, with very clear expectations that they needed to look at that interest and audience level, as well as any reviews that are out there. And the librarian in me has it hard to say this, but yes, I told them to Google away, find whatever you can find, and they were very diligent in what they did when reviewing those titles. This summer, I'm excited to say I have over 25 media specialists who have volunteered to review the K2 Sunshine State, as well as the 3.5 and the 6.8. Because you know that we use those for Battle of the Books. And so I will easily have 5 reads on those with the physical titles. Okay. So for August, they will be able, based on the reviews that we have for the Sunshine State books this summer, they will be able to purchase them right away, especially those 3.5 titles for Battle of the Books, because it takes sometimes a long time for our elementary friends to read all those and be successful. The respective grade bands, meaning elementary, junior high, and high school, will work together once again to come up with that collaborative list with input from stakeholders, such as community members, their teachers, their administration, and I'm sure they're excited just to have new materials in their libraries for students to access. Prior to purchase, we do have to post all library media orders to our district website for public comment. So that gives stakeholders in our community the opportunity to say, hey, wait a minute, this title here, in my opinion, it's another set of eyes and ears on what we are doing. So I think that's a positive as well. And this is new, but for senior high titles, because we are learning kind of what the publishers are telling us are in the book may or may not be really what's in there. So we are going to have the opportunity to actually get the titles and allow them a chance to preview those titles as well for our senior highs. Thank you.
So that leads to, and I know Dr. Johnson, you have copies for everyone. So I know Mrs. Hanson, we worked hard with her on this of putting together a rubric, and that's referenced in the policy. So this gives the idea, and this will help us with guidelines for future purchasing. And you can see here, we've got all the board-approved community standards that we have listed in our policy. And then we've got some elementary, junior high, and senior high guidelines. And there's also, with an asterisk, some of the examples of books that would kind of be within the limitations of that particular category. So I'll give you a minute just to kind of look at that. Collins, ma'am.
This Anne Frank, that's saying that we're leaving that, right?
Yes.
Okay. I just want the record to state that we have not removed Anne Frank from our reading, correct?
Correct. There was a graphic novel that was challenged, and that was removed, but graphic novels, it did not have, it had some scenes in it that weren't appropriate.
Historically accurate.
You're right, it was not historically
But
accurate.
the actual diary.
No,
of
the
Anne
diary, no,
Frank,
it is
okay.
fine.
I just need people from New Jersey and California and other places to understand that we did not remove that.
Right, and you'll see that there's an asterisk at the bottom that says example of acceptable titles that fall within limitations of the category. So we have a few examples with the help of Mrs. Hanson that we've added, and there may be more examples, however, this is where we were.
Like we noted here, Arthur's birthday. Mrs. Hanson, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to know, I'm looking at this, and you did a great job. Is this kind of like, I know that it's in the policy, and I know that we voted on it, but is this something the board can discuss and maybe add more titles of examples that are acceptable? Or is this, maybe it's a question for the lawyer, is this not tight just like it is, or can it be worked on?
Mr. Buckley.
Well, the chair. So Mrs. Hanson, I think what you're seeing here is kind of the reflection on prior board workshops, some discussion. Generally, y'all as a board are going to set the policy, and then the superintendent and staff will kind of make sure that we're carrying out y'all's direction. So when it comes to specific books that, and I think I heard your question in its entirety, but if there's specific books that maybe there's a question whether they fall within one of these criteria, and I think what we want to do, since the board's approved this, rubric and policy, we want to make sure, or we'll go through this approval process, we want to make sure that's kind of directed to staff so they can kind of go through the whole policy and procedures that y'all have established. Does that answer your question, ma'am?
I think my question was, as we move forward, can we change the rubric or add more detail to it? Or is it a tight rubric with no exception?
It's going to take board approval, so y'all would have to adjust the policy to direct the staff to do that. Because this current rubric is based on the policies that y'all approved, giving direction to staff as far as establishing community standards. The statute, under Florida statutes that govern this section, boards are allowed to come up with basically really a community standard. So this is the community standard that y'all have established. So there are going to be adjustments made to this that would take board action.
So could you add titles for clarification if you didn't change the actual word of the rubric?
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. So if you're describing more cosmetic changes, I think staff can do that.
Examples, like Anne Frank, I can think of more examples we can put in the boxes that are blank.
Sure.
Without changing the words of the rubric, would that be allowed?
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. I think that's something that if, as long as those to me are not substantive changes, I would not interpret those as substantive changes. I would view that more as cosmetic, more clarifying changes. So those can always be made because they do not undermine, or not undermine, it's a poor choice of words. They don't change really the policy or kind of, characterize the policy differently. So the current policy would stay in place, but this would be more kind of a refining process to make sure that there's more clarity. Does that make sense?
Yeah, everybody, when it comes to novels rubrics, this is a very good rubric, but I think when we give examples of what is acceptable, it helps all people, regardless of what angle they're coming from, understand what's acceptable and what's not. So the only thing I think of is maybe we could add a few more examples of what's acceptable.
Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. I spoke to the staff. I think now would be the time to maybe make some recommendations while it's still fresh. If we need to provide some clarifying, language or so, but we just want to make sure that we're not changing the underlying policy because this is being drawn from the policy that y'all approved. So, does that make sense?
Yep.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. So the final section talks about appeals, and so kind of where we're at with those. So as of May 24th, there's 485 appeals, and district staff is currently preparing those for the board, and they'll be presented. And so this is really an area of discussion as well once we're finished. So it's really what you all feel most comfortable in accepting those. And as a reminder, the vote, once they come to the board, will not be to say, like, we endorse the content or a particular subject matter. It's purely that our policy and that the law was followed in improving those. So, like, we have 485, if you want 485, or if you want 50 at a time, that will really be the board discussion. And then once cleared, the appeals will be presented to the board for updated policy, and the Board of Action will be mailed to the petitioner.
So I have a question on that. A lot of the appeals came to us prior to the current update with the rubric. So as you're preparing those appeals for the board, are you running them through the rubric?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you're following our current policy before you submit it to us?
Yes. So it has gone through all of the committees, all of the people that have had to see it, the professionals who've seen it.
Yes, ma'am.
It has met our standards according to our community standards. And those, whatever number ends up, have gone through all of those standards and they're basically appealed for whatever reason.
Yes.
Thank you.
I do have a question about that.
Yes, ma'am.
So, of the 485 appeals, so I'm going to give an example. Originally, the board was, on our docket, our agenda was 172 titles. I literally had my teacher friends and I went through and read every single one of them. And in that original 172, about 163 I thought should go right back on the shelf. There were 5 books that I felt like needed more discussion, and under our new rubric would not have made it back on the shelf. Are you saying that all 485 of these appeals have gone to the new rubric and you now know whether or not they belong in a parental advisory section, or is it just a go on all of them that remain that they're going back on the shelf?
I think from what I understand, you guys are in the process.
Yes.
So they're in the process of putting them all through
Yes.
our current policy and holding them up against the rubric, but they're not completed yet. That's why we haven't seen them yet.
Yes. Mr. Daly.
So on the appeals, because there's now board community approved standards, we need to go back retroactively through the entire catalog. We have some extended days during the summer hours. We've already scheduled time to meet and go back through those. But to be thorough, we think that retroactively applying the new community standards that the board approved to those would make sense. At that point, once we've done now, that's hundreds of appeals. It's going to take a long, long time. We anticipate being able to get that done before the end of the summer, before school starts, and we're getting to work on that immediately. At that point, we could report out to you the status of those books. And really, those books, there's not any 847, they would have already been removed. This would just be, do they or not get a parental advisory flagging to them? So, and then you would know again, and we wrote into the policy that when you're, as a board, when you are weighing in on the appeals, again, I say this is written expressly into the policy for your purposes, you're not voting to condone the content or material, maybe a favorite book, maybe a book that you don't like. You're voting on whether or not you believe, to the best of your knowledge, that we followed law, policy, and procedure on those. So we did that so that you don't get connected by people from New Jersey on whether or not you're weighing in on this particular book or not. Other boards have taken different direction. I don't know if you've seen what St. Johns County is doing this morning. They're having to, as a board, weigh in on specific books. You won't have to do that in any case, and so this will be left to the process, and the board-approved community standards will be utilized as an additional filtering mechanism so that parents and you have greater clarity on what we have in those books.
Madam Chair, if I
Mr. Daly,
Yes, ma'am.
I really appreciate what you just said and the amount of effort it's going to take your folks to do that. So when you do bring these books, 485 titles, on there will also be your recommendations as to what we should do with those titles?
Yes, ma'am, and those recommendations will be congruent with the board-approved community standards that you all brought forward, and so we'll make sure that those are in alignment with that.
I cannot tell you how happy I am to hear, not that you guys have to work your tails off all summer, I apologize for that, but I am so grateful to your efforts to go back through and make sure that we as a district have done the right thing, and I appreciate you guys for that.
Yes, ma'am, we appreciate the board bringing forward the conversation and the additional clarification that will make our jobs easier, and it'll be a better outcome for our parents and students. So thank you and the rest of the board.
Okay, well done.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I could just highlight one point here. Again, when these appeals come back, y'all are, again, just to highlight what Mr. Daly said, y'all sit almost in a quasi-judicial role at that point, so y'all are, it's not strictly quasi-judicial, y'all are simply making sure that the process, the appellate process went through. So if there is a challenge to a book that says, look, this does violate 847, y'all's evaluation will be to make sure that the staff, that the underlying committees that have reviewed this have appropriately viewed it, because 847 pornography will be removed automatically. But now that y'all, and y'all should be applauded for this, y'all have come up with a community standard, whereas Mr. Daly mentioned, my home county has not done that. So they are struggling where the board itself is weighing in on these matters publicly and then dealing with all the turmoil comes with that. So I know that y'all have all taken some criticism in the public here in Clay County, but what y'all have, I think, is a role model for the rest of the region for community standard. And I appreciate all y'all's efforts, all the staff efforts that have gone into this, because there's been a lot of work that's gone into this. So, but again, when y'all vote on this, this is not an endorsement of a particular matter. Just like a judge sitting in a courtroom is not weighing in on their personal preferences, they're making a decision whether the law has been followed. So.
Can I
Can I say one last thing real quick?
Yes.
I know that I have been, I think relentless is probably the best word I can come up with when it comes to this issue we had. And I want to thank all of you who read my lengthy email, and I'm really impressed with what you came up with, and it is a great start for us. And I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hanson. And this point here, I know we've said it multiple times, is underlined and bolded in the board policy as well, okay. So just, I know that Susie talked a few minutes ago about a lot of the proactive measures that are being put into place as far as the librarians reading the books this summer, and it's exciting that books have been ordered. So Mr. Daly talked a little bit about this. Personnel are actively reviewing materials in the libraries. We've actually repurposed, not created, repurposed a position to help with this. And questionable materials are being reviewed by several people. And so again, using those community standards, parental advisory status warning would be used in that case as well. And so if you flip to the next screen, Susie has an update too of how they're working with Destiny.
So Destiny is our online catalog. It's where we house everything that's in our collection, as well as all the patrons to check out materials too. So Destiny is working across the nation with, other districts who are also in the same kind of situation. And so one thing that is going to be released this summer, and I don't know, once I get all the details, I'll explain how it works. But Destiny, parents will be able to log into their student's Destiny account to see current checkouts, as well as their checkout history. So everything that they have ever checked out is going to be available. And hopefully by August, parents will also be able to go into their student's Destiny account and check off either specific titles or subjects that will block the student from checking out that book. So from what I understand, when a child goes up to do the circulation desk to check out a title that their parent has blocked, a big message will come across the librarian's screen, and there is no manual override. We will not be able to override what that parent choice is. Wow. So I'm not sure how it's all going to work yet, but it is in the works. Okay?
So it's another thing in place. So we just appreciate everyone's attention and collaboration, discussion on this over the past couple of years. I know a lot of things have evolved and will probably continue to evolve. I know Roger mentioned that. I saw that on the news this morning about our neighboring county and the things that they were happening. But if you have any questions or discussion, we'll open it up to that. And thank you for your attention to where we're at this morning.
I just want to commend Dr. Johnson and the Scannon. You guys have been rock stars in this process. And I can't thank you enough for all of the turmoil you've put up with, the criticism you've put up with. It has been tough on you, we know. We hear you, but we also greatly appreciate you all. As well as you, Ms. Collins, sorry. I know that they've been on this from the very beginning. And I know it's been a tough road, but total rock stars. Thank you for all you've done.
And Mr. Daly as well.
Oh, Mr. Daly as well. He and I have talked many times.
I do have a card.
Ellen.
Ms. Kipper. Oh, let me let Ms. Clark.
No, I just wanted to add to that. There are so many people that have been involved in this, and I would like to think that our county will be like Florida is in the nation, and that we can help other counties with this. But I see a lot of, going back to a book that we found a long time ago, the fact is we still need to educate our parents so that they know they can go out there and be a part of this. And hopefully we'll get some of the students back in the libraries. But my biggest concern is things haven't changed with the bookmakers. So that's going to be a tough, continued situation to have to deal with. But thank you to everybody.
Ms. Skipper, did you?
And I just have one question. Do we know when the compliance team will be put together under the new standards? Would be the parent or our choice of a person to participate?
We'll be forming that. We'll ask the board for their choice as to the parent. That's part of that team, for one from each board member to form that team. Right now, we're still going through that initial screening piece of the policy, going over the 470 plus, which will take a little bit of time, but we're hopeful that by the end of summer, that'll be complete, that work.
Ms. Skipper?
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you guys. I know we've caught some heat, or I in particular have caught some heat, so I can't even imagine what you guys have been catching. I jokingly say I need Botox from it all, but thank you, and I'm excited for what we have for future purchasing and being able to get our kids reading ability. Focusing on is getting back to books and reading.
So my question is about the attestation form that media specialists are asked to sign by May 30th about purchasing. And the first 3 bullets in the attestation form says, it mirrors the statute, so no problem with that, right? Free of pornography, this is for purchases suited to student needs and ability to comprehend, appropriate for grade level. That's right. The 4th bullet says, complies with board-approved community standards and library book purchasing guidelines and descriptions. And so I'm looking at the community standards and I'm seeing some grayness here, like what I feel might not be glorifying violence, someone else might feel is glorifying violence. I'm a little bit uncomfortable with the final agreement that these media specialists are signing, which says, I personally attest that this title is congruent with all state laws and board policy. I understand that a request for a title that violates state law or board policy can result in disciplinary action up to termination. Do we really want that language? Is that what I don't think the board ever intends to, put our media specialists under the gun. They have a lot going on, but if I think we need to make a change there. We're asking them to sign this May 30th, and we're still developing board policy. And this community standards, to me, is a little, anything that's not in the law, I think is a little bit subject to interpretation.
And Mr. Daly raised his hand.
Good question. So we've worked hand in glove with the media specialists, particularly this concerns the senior high media specialists, where 100% of these books that violate the law have been discovered. And I've met with them personally, as you're aware, on innumerable occasions with complete transparency. They're good folks working hard who've kind of been caught into this. However, as you point out, there is some subjectivity, right, with this. And so we haven't been able to get to a point where there has been clarity. I would rather talk to you about this privately on some of these things, but what we have seen are requests and conversations where they come forward with books that absolutely either violate the law or incongruent with the board approved community standards. What this is, as you're aware, the media specialists are named in statute as being responsible. So are their principals, so is this board. So to protect all 3 of those groups, I want to make sure that there is clear and sober reflection on what they are requesting, because the requests that we have received so far are incongruent with the community standards, put themselves at risk, put their principals at risk, and put this board at risk. So we're happy to have the conversation. What we really want is the goal, the objective, is for them, and I would say this as the chief academic officer, for everything we do, when we choose a biology worksheet or a history lesson or a poem to read, we should be asking, why are we selecting this to put in front of students? I'd say the same goes true for the books that we select in our library. And so I think we all agree that we want kids to read, but what they're reading is also very important. And I don't want to put us in a situation where we can't defend what we're doing, that what we're doing is incongruent with what we said we're going to do. I think I can stand up here and defend how we got to this point, but we've had hundreds of books that were sitting in our shelves that violated the Florida law. I want to ensure that going forward, nothing that we onboard violates the law. So if they would like to have a conversation, I think we need to dig deeper into that. But I've had situations where some of these media specialists have been asked to review some of the books and have said, yeah, that has things that violate the law in it, I don't want to say it publicly, and I'm not taking that off the shelf. Well, that puts us in a situation that can only result in employee disciplinary conversations. I don't want it to go that way, and I think you know that I will work very hard to protect those individuals involved. But unless we put some teeth into this, in my opinion, we put the board at risk, we put the principals at risk, and we put the media specialists themselves at risk. If there's a better way to do it, I'm all ears, but it seems to have gotten people's attention, which is what the objective was to begin with. So,
Mr. Daly, I would just ask and expect that if there was a question, if a media center specialist wanted to get a book, they're looking at the community guidelines, and like you said, there's a gray area, and they're not sure, there's always a resource for them to ask.
yeah, let me give you an example. For example, let's say a book like Tim O'Brien's The Things They Carry. That would violate the board-approved community standards. It's an autobiographical look at what happened to troops in Vietnam. So it has war violence, which is graphic. It has the language of soldiers, which is profane, and that type of thing. But I think a case could be made that there might be opportunities for students to learn about the horror of war, and like especially, we're the day after Memorial Day. Could a book like that is a conversation for curriculum councils and for us that can be had, I think, on a one-off case-by-case basis. But in general, what I want to avoid is going back to the habit that's always been there. I'm just going to order these books. Let me give you this example. When I ask media specialists, why do you choose these books? The most common answer is it's a high interest for teens or for the age group, okay? That's great. But let me put this at an example. But let's say I went to the cafeteria today and I wanted to order a drink. I could order milk. I could order water. I could order juice. Right? I couldn't get a Coke. I couldn't get a beer. I couldn't get a margarita. There are some high schools in the United States where if you have a margarita lime or a beer cake, there might be high interest in that. That doesn't mean it's nutritious and good for kids or appropriate for their age. And so I use that to say that we just have to continue to have the conversations around these things, because if we go back 2.5 years ago, where I was sitting in for Mr. Brodsky, who was attending a function for his son that night, and our primary complainant came forward, and I asked him, could I speak? The first thing I said, it's on video, you can go back and look at it, was, let's everyone take a breath, because this is going to be a tough issue, because it evokes passion on both sides. And it's always flummoxed school boards and communities because of the attachment to the First Amendment issues, and then we have kids of minority age and parents' rights, and all these things are part of the matrix that we have to consider. There's no scenario where we end up with a perfect situation, a perfect policy, a perfect procedure, a perfect way of doing things. But we've evolved with it over the last 2.5 years, and the primary goal right now is to make sure that we're following the law, we're providing parents with information and options, and that we're protecting our employees, sometimes even from themselves. If we find a better way to do it, we'll bring that forward in a heartbeat. I care very deeply about our media specialists. I think they know that. I think you all know that. And I have gone out of my way to work with them like face to face, and I will continue to do that. But right now, I am concerned that we're not on the same page, and I don't want to see any one of them getting into hot water because unlike other places, we are under tremendous scrutiny on this issue. We all know that. And so for now, I'd say we walk carefully and look for better options as we go.
May I ask a question? Ms. Kidwell, that's for purchasing books, is that correct? And is it not my understanding that any purchases of books need to go through your office as well, Ms. Gannon?
Right.
And so the approval of that purchase, if let's say a book was purchased and approved, to me, and I'm speaking from a teacher perspective, and no offense, but to put more on your shoulders, but that would be my insurance policy. Because if I was attempting to purchase a book and it went to Ms. Gannon and it went through, and then came back to that teacher, along with a lot of us, are going to be, a lot of us would have to lose our jobs then, I would say.
Mrs. Baldwin, and so when ordering these books, like what we found already was with no attestation, these are the books I want to order. Present the attestation, I pull those books back, I don't want to order those books.
Right.
What does that tell you? They don't know what they don't know what's in the book. Now, that's a Herculean task to know what's in the book, but that's the job. I don't know how to make that easier because I've had to go through these books myself. I can't count the hours that I've gone through them. But there's a lot in them when you dig into them. And so right now, I think that's a safe way. I'm not worried about elementary. I'm not worried very much about junior high. But senior high, I've personally gone through hundreds of these things that violate the law and certainly would be flagged under the board-approved community standards. If at some point the board wanted to make way for those, we could, but that, as she points out, there's so much subjectivity around that. We don't have a mechanism in place at this time for that. So my advice would be, start simply, start assuredly, let's get comfortable and get our footing, because we're wading back into the purchasing waters, see how that goes, reflect, and have a subsequent conversation at that time.
Mr. Daly,
Yes, ma'am.
you not only speak like a very knowledgeable person since the start of this, but very eloquent. And I can tell you should probably be careful because you're starting to sound like maybe the country's leading expert.
Thank you, Ms. Hanson. Not a position I'm seeking.
Plus the media specialist can always reach out if there's a question as to whether or not they're feeling like it's iffy. There's resources to reach out and say, what do you think of this particular title? As Ms. Gilhousen pointed out. Thank you, ladies. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
So next is the budget presentation.
Yes, so we were asked to give an update, an overview of the budget coming up, and Dr. Vecchio has that for you.
Ms. Gilhousen,
Can I make a statement before we start with?
although I appreciate this budget update, which is probably something that we're gonna do anyway next month, and we've done this a million times over the year, but I feel as though when we requested this, what the intent was for us as a board, 5 members, our job is the budget. And what my intent, I feel, was to sit down and say, as a board member, I would like to see funds here, 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 and here, and then have our superintendent and CFO guide us with that. I personally do not feel, and I'm speaking for myself, if others feel comfortable with doing this, that's fine, but per state statute, the budget is our job, and I don't feel comfortable every year having a packaged bow and asked to approve a budget. Especially when we are talking about wanting more funds to go to teachers, wanting more funds to go to repairing schools, whatever. And I get how we have different buckets within our, I'm gonna call them buckets, people call them different things. But when you are a business owner, and I look at this from a business perspective, let's just say you have three main buckets within our budget. General, federal funds, capital funds, all these things. Once it gets to that second bucket, it's as though you go cross-eyed in a way and have no idea where it then goes. And to be fair, that's not transparency for any taxpayer. And what I'm saying, I guess what I'm saying to all of us is that we, as a board of 5, do not know this budget like we should. And I'm going to tell you, I went to many seminars, I've been to many conferences, I have went through budget finance, I have sat with our CFO for 7.5 hours to know what audits we do, what the law is, how you can spend money here, but you can't touch it over here because this has to be allocated there. And I feel as though all of you have been on the board a while, we should all know that. So repeating that information, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, but I feel like it's sometimes a waste of time. Because, and I'm not saying I'm an expert by any means by doing all of that education, I'm just saying that we as a board, if you're comfortable with getting a packaged bow and stamping it, that's fine, but I am not personally comfortable with that. And I want us to all sit down and rigorously speak and talk about how and where we want funding to go. And you can't say that we've done that. We may say it here and there like, hey, I feel like we need more funds here or whatever. But as far as what other districts do, what our job states we should do, it's not clearly being done. And so, although I appreciate this, but I can tell you we're probably going to sit through several slides, and no disrespect, I know I'm not being disrespectful by any means. We're going to sit here for the next hour and a half reviewing this and what we've done in the past, where things should go as far as like laws and all that, and audits, but I feel we should be discussing and then relying on these two for resources. Because we are supposed to be just as knowledgeable about this budget to the extent we do not have a degree in finance or any of that. But we should equally know this budget, and I don't feel that's the case.
Then Jennifer, can I add on what you're saying?
Yes, but I just want to say this too, you know, you have, I use the county commission as an example because that's our you know, we're governing and they govern and they have a budget that they do as well. And they sit and say, hey, you know, this amount of money should go to safety and security, this amount of money should go to roads, this amount of money should do this. And it's almost as though it's line item. And I'm just saying all of this to say is we are elected by the people and the people want more transparency. They want to see their board members actively discussing our budget and actively being involved in our budget. And when you're asked in the public, I've looked over your budget, I'm highly confused because I run a multi-million-dollar business and I'm not seeing the transparency that I should be seeing. I know we check the boxes per the state. Everybody does those same audits. But there's one box that we don't check effectively, and that's the taxpayer box. And that's what I'm here to talk about when I look at things like this, because we're going to sit here for the next hour and a half learning stuff we already know. We've already done. But what I'm requesting as a board member is that we become more involved and where our funds come from. And then moving forward with what we discussed last time with an internal auditor. Because the law clearly states, and I have it, that if your budget is over $500 million, there's no section 2754319 where you reference it and it says debt ratio and all this stuff. It clearly states per law over $500 million, we are required to have a third-party internal auditor. It's clear as day. So I want to advocate for both of those things and talk about that. You as a board, or we as a board can move forward but I don't think that wasn't my intent when I agreed to call for this meeting, was a budget update in that aspect.
So you'd be happy to know that it's 30 minutes in length.
I'm just
Okay.
saying, but I'm just saying, I'm saying is have we already, I mean, I'm looking at this,
No, in
plain
fact,
adoption.
Can I say something really quick?
Just 1 second, Ms. Hanson. So can I make a suggestion? What if we view this as a springboard, and this meeting can be exactly what you want?
the board
So allow
board
the
can certainly
presentation?
set priorities as to what budget items they would.
Well, I think we've
prioritize.
talked about that over and over and over again in other meetings that, hey, and I know Ms. Hanson has said it since she's been on the board, hey, I want to have a budget discussion, I want to have a budget
Well,
discussion.
let's have it.
Right, well, that's what we've been trying to do, and I thought that that's what today was
That is
about.
Yes.
But now I'm gonna list,
We're gonna have a presentation to set the foundation. Let's look at it that way. So we all are on the same page starting, right? And then we can talk about whatever you'd like to talk about, Ms. Skipper, anything. It's all on the table. And same for you, Ms. Hanson. Did you have
Well, Madam
anything?
Chair, I just want to say one thing. We were not elected to be a passive member of the budget. It is traditional in this district, this county, that everything that happens with us in the budget that involves us is very passive. In fact, the budget, by statute, does belong to the board. We have very little. We have budget and we have policy. I think the frustration comes from both Ms. Skipper and myself is that we have been slammed into a passive role where we are shown over and over again. I've gone to advanced finance forums, the same things in there, the same things I saw pretty much when I first came on the board. What we are asking for is to become active members of the process, not passive members of the process. And so we can live for 30 minutes, as we always do. But that is not what I thought this was when we met with the labor attorney and decided we would have a budget meeting. So I agree with Ms. Skipper on the goal of what I thought this meeting was.
Well, the goal hasn't changed. We're just starting with the presentation. So the meeting is whatever you want it to be. And you can bring forward whatever priorities you have, make whatever suggestions you would like to. There's no limitation on what we can discuss here as a board in regards to the budget. So the purpose of the presentation is just for us to have a starting point so that we can all have some reference material and have the overview of the district's recommendation, because in my opinion, if we're going to do something different than what the district is recommending, let's at least start with what their recommendation is. Does that make sense? Yes, no?
I mean, that's fine. I mean,
It's just a starting point for discussion. That's all it is.
And we can add whatever workshops we need to
Correct,
based on.
absolutely.
As we
but I just want like us to, like like if we state that we want something, I want it to actually be done. So, which is my frustration as a board member, you know, let's look back at the police department, for example. We have asked for multiple line item budgets for them to be present for the taxpayer, and it has yet to be done. I think every time that Ms. Hanson speaks about the budget, she talks about that transparency. And when you have, like I talk about those three buckets, once it gets to that second bucket, nobody knows where it goes.
So am I understanding that this isn't enough information? You want more information before we have a discussion, or you feel like?
Well, I also would have liked to have this prior to this meeting. And that's another frustrating part, so is that I could be more prepared, one, but two, which I know a lot of this information, my other one is gutted to all kinds of the ends of the earth.
So,
But my point is when we're looking at a budget and you have general, okay, let's do half-cent sales tax, for example. You have that broke down into salary, insurance, and where's the rest of it? And underneath the salary, why is there no more breakdown of that? So that we know,
Not the half cent.
I meant the security, the,
No.
mill, that's what I meant, sorry. There is no additional breakdown, to know your total number and where it goes, where it literally goes.
So would you prefer that we take these budget workshops in chunks where we look at, for example, we have a budget workshop on the millage, and then we have a budget workshop on the half-cent sales tax, and then we have, so that way, I don't know if that would even, I don't know what your software allows, or how deep of a dive we could take into each of those buckets, so to speak.
But if that software doesn't allow that, then we need to purchase the software that does.
I'm not saying we don't, I'm just,
Right.
I'm trying to meet you.
Right, and that's fine. I mean, I don't really know that we have time between now and when the budget is due to do that this year, but I would like to do that, because I would like to know so many people, especially if we are going to want to put this back on the ballot to get a renewal for safety and security, if we do not break that down and show the taxpayers, hey, $100 went to this, you know, I mean, all the way down to that. I mean, you can do that. Businesses do that. It is, when people say it's not a thing, it's a thing. Breaking it down to the point where we know where every dollar is going, so that we can then say, okay, well, you know, we need more money in hardening our schools. Or, hey, we have leftover money from the sheriff's department because it was given back to us, you know, and now we can put that in to additional security measures here. And this is just one bucket I'm giving an example of. Especially when we're trying to find funds for teachers and trying to get money back into the classroom. I just don't feel comfortable with saying that, okay, we have no idea where AP funds are. We know that they're going to AP classes and AP whatever, but where are they actually going? That is the involvement that I want to make sure that we are involved in, especially when one school suffers more with this or that or whatever. And I know that that's the guidance of the superintendent, but we as board members should be actively involved in that. And I'm not saying, the principal needs, because I know this is exactly how people are interpreting this right now. I'm not saying the principal calls the board and says, hey, can I get $5 for AP classes? That's not what I'm saying. That obviously is going to happen for these two. What I'm saying is, we as a board make sure that we allocate it where it needs to go, and make sure that what we want and the direction that we want as a board, this budget is going in that direction.
Well, you know, one of the problems is, I'll tell you the main problem is when you receive a PowerPoint or a packet the day of, there is absolutely no way that any single one of us could have researched, came up and formulated very good questions. We do not know or are not prepared, once again, to have a discussion about this presentation. I have asked more than a dozen times that we receive what we need so that as a board, we can research and make sure that we are making decisions in the best interest of our taxpayers. How can anyone expect to have a conversation when you do not see something until the day of a meeting?
Can I
This is
call
like
a time out real
blasphemy.
quick? Just time out real quick. So I'm hearing conflicting things here. On one hand, you want to drive the budget meeting and you're offended that the district office provides a presentation, but on the other hand, you want more information and you want that information ahead of the meeting. So you're not giving clear direction about your expectations, and so you're going to continue to be frustrated until we can communicate in a way that we understand each other what the expectation is for the meeting. So the way that we've always held budget workshops is that Dr. Legutko will make a presentation, the board can ask any questions and have any discussion that we'd like to have.
Which we've had.
Which
Yes.
we have done in the past, and I can tell you, back when I first got on the board, the budget meetings were very different because we were having to make cuts. And so there was discussion about which departments are we going to have to cut by what percentage in order to make up the fund balance that was far below state statute at the time. So depending on the financial status of the district, those meetings have looked different in the past. So if as a board, what we want to say is we'd like, and again, that would be something, some of this would have to be shade meetings because they would involve, if you're talking about salary increases, those are negotiated. So that would be something that in the shade we would say, we want to increase the allotted funds by this percentage, and then please bring us a budget that allows for that. Or if you say, I think we're spending too much money here, I want to see a reduction by whatever percentage, what would that look like? And then we could have so you have to ask specific questions to get specific answers, and to have a specific conversation, we all, to your point, need to have that information, right?
So, and that's what I'm asking. That's what we should be doing every year with the budget, without fail. Okay, are we overspending here? Do we need to allocate funds over here? How do we come up to be competitive? How do we come up with these funds to be competitive for our teachers? How are we going to, maybe move positions around so that these funds can be elsewhere? And that is the discussion that the board should be having every year without fail.
Which we have had.
Okay, well, since I've been on the board, we've had very little, some discussion, but not to the point of what the state statute says we should be doing.
I'm sorry, just from my perspective, and maybe I misunderstood, but I thought that Ms. Hanson requested this presentation.
I thought there was information.
And I thought that there was information coming in specifically regarding what some of the requests were.
Right.
So we need this to know.
I don't think I've never requested a
Ms. Hanson
presentation.
requested it.
She requested
I did a request of,
So
here's the thing,
Not a presentation.
I'm not sure the board is aware that most districts, they start budget meetings with their board in January. When their CFO is getting the information, they start these processes very early, and they are very specific, like Ms. Gilhousen said. How do we get from always getting a long presentation and we're unprepared to ask questions because we haven't seen it, to the conversations that Ms. Skipper and I, and I'm not sure how the rest of the board feels, but to the point that we can get to the specifics of our own budget and have those hard discussions. So how do we get from where we are now, and we have started very late this year, the board members that I know across the state start in January. They have bi-weekly and sometimes monthly or bi-weekly meetings to start the specifics of the budget. So did you have suggestions on how because it's already June almost now, how can we move forward in that right direction?
So that would be driven by the board. If there are things that we as a board want to see changed, then we need to have that discussion. We don't depend on the district office to figure out our priorities. We set those.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you can have that conversation anytime. So if you have, I'm comfortable with the budget that we have. That's why I've not made any suggestions for changes. But if there are changes that you want to see made, the onus is on you, Ms. Hanson, and you, Ms. Skipper, to say, I think, this is too much money. How can we cut it to this amount of money? And I'd like to see, you can have those conversations, but the onus is on you.
So at what point, though, are we, I guess,
at any point.
Mr. Blocker, I like your idea of doing the different chunks and doing it that way so that the budget is not so overwhelming. But at what point is it considered shade? Because a lot of these buckets have salary in them.
Yes, ma'am. So we would have to, there are going to be certain things that are going to turn into labor negotiations, if there's litigation. So when there are those type of issues that come up, if there's a labor negotiation matter or something like that, then we would request a shade meeting to discuss that, to bring that to the board's attention. We had a meeting with our labor council to go over, so that would be an example.
But let's just say the mill, okay, the one mill. There's salary within that.
Yes, ma'am.
So at what point, if we wanted to tackle that, at what point would that be, should that be a shade meeting since there is salary involved in that?
No, ma'am, that would not be a shade meeting. So those, y'all can have as a board, have general discussions on that. When it comes into, with the teachers union, where there's more specific, negotiating, things of that matter, we want to have that.
So the shade would come into effect when you say, I want to raise teacher salaries by X percentage. I want to make sure teachers get X amount of dollars. Those sorts of things you cannot say publicly.
Right.
Those things have to be said in the
But that's what
shade.
I'm saying, as we are saying, okay, well, we can cut here to provide for teachers there, is that going to be borderline shade? Because that's what I'm saying, like if we're,
You just don't say it that way. That you would have a conversation in the shade about what your priorities are going into bargaining. And then in the public, we're gonna go through the budget. We're not gonna talk about bargaining issues. Does that make sense?
So Ms. Gilhousen, in public, could we have a meeting to talk about ways to increase the general fund, for instance? That would be open to everyone, right?
Well, I don't know that we can increase the general fund. The general fund is whatever the state and local taxes generate. So we don't get to increase the general fund.
She's referring to a fund.
Well,
So
I guess
increasing
maybe
the
I used the
fund
wrong word,
Are you referring to the fund balance?
fund balance, thank you, Ms. Fuller. I lost the words for a minute.
Right.
But we could do something like that, right? That's open
That's open, but it depends on.
So, and again, Ms. Hanson, if those are things that you have ideas for, it is on you to communicate those ideas. You can't expect the rest of your board members to come with ideas if we're comfortable with what
Well,
has been
quite
presented.
honestly, I have asked for us to have budget meetings starting in January since I've been on the board. So I'm not sure, maybe I need to learn how to communicate that even better, but I can go back and watch myself ask for these
No,
meetings.
I'm not saying you haven't asked for the meetings. What I'm saying is when we have the meetings, we're having it right now. So what is it that you want to communicate to the board members? Because you called the meeting. So my assumption was that you had something that you needed to discuss with us.
Well, I wanted to discuss how to make cuts.
How to make cuts to the budget.
Here or there, I'm not sure how we would go about it. Increasing the fund balance was part of my discussion. No one asked me when I have to have the meeting, but I can tell you one thing I want to resolve is the internal auditor. And that did come out of my mouth at the last workshop, and it was one of the things that I wanted to discuss. I'm willing to watch the PowerPoint. I'm not saying that it's a bad idea to watch the PowerPoint. What I am saying is, it would have been better to have it ahead of time so that I could be of use, I guess, to the board. Because at this point, when you don't have time to research and understand what you're being presented, it is hard to formulate good questions and participate in a good conversation when you're not prepared.
So Ms. Hanson, to me, that's like cart and horse here. So you asked for the budget meeting, so my expectation is you've been preparing for the budget meeting in order to bring whatever ideas and suggestions and changes you wanted to see come forward. So
The PowerPoint is like FC, the funding and where our money goes.
So you can get that information anytime. I can tell you there are times in the past where I have brought items to the board that I wanted considered. And so when you bring an item or you call a meeting, because there are things that you want the board to consider, it's up to you to provide that information to your fellow board members so we know.
I am prepared to have the board consider the internal auditor based on Florida statute.
Okay, may I ask a quick question about that, Ms. Hanson? Because Ms. Skipper brought that up too. And frankly, I'm sorry?
yeah, last workshop.
Yeah, no, I'm saying the internal auditors come up. And the question was, at $500 million, you have to have an internal auditor, and I understand that. And we're talking a position that's definitely going to cost, well, at least for salary, probably I'm not sure how much, but quite a lot. More than a teacher, most definitely. May I ask, I'm asking Dr. Legutko a question as to what is our considered total budget for, and as it relates to that law?
For the last 2 years, it's been about $459 million 459 million as part of the audit, and you can see that the total budget, including federal, state, everything, it's about 459.
So we're not at the 500 million?
No, we are not.
So
at
where's
that, no.
$620-something million coming from? What is our budget, our total budget, without debt, all that? What is our total budget?
Our total budget is about 550 million.
Okay, can I read the state law to you?
Yes.
I have the state law. Right here. It does not say anything about any of that. Hold on. It states, internal auditor may, or in the case of a school district receiving annual federal, state, and local funds in the excess of $500 million, shall employ an internal auditor.
Okay, so the number's 459 according to that. So you said in excess of, give me the three again?
In excess of annual federal, state, and local funds.
There you go, so that's 459.
But our total, okay, but is our total, okay.
So
either way,
I have another question.
our state is, or our city, or county is growing. We'll exceed
Our
that.
county is growing, most definitely. Well, what? I still have another question. What does an internal auditor do then that, so they would obviously be an auditor that would audit this budget. Do they also then audit every school budget? That's not what the purpose of an internal auditor. I'm asking Dr. Legatko, Ms. Hanson, just a moment, please.
That's not the purpose.
So the explain to me what you think the internal auditor does.
Well, there are two different positions. One is an internal accounts auditor, who is currently who we have employed, who handles the schools. They are hired for specifically to review the internal accounts funds that come into the school that are used for athletics or different types of activities. So that's the internal accounts auditors.
Okay.
Okay, so that is a position. The internal auditor is specific to the board. It is that position reports directly to the board, similar to the attorney position, and they work at the will of the board. So like Ms. Skipper indicated, she wanted to see exactly how much the mill money, where is that mill money going? And even though we do present that in our financial statements, she can further dig into, not dig, but further ask that auditor, please, I'd like to see whether or not, these salaries, who are they? I mean, it's similar, you can ask our office as well, we can provide that. That is very transparent, we can report that, but it's not available on the, available specifically at that level. But the internal auditor that reports to the board is at the will of the board and can do whatever you all choose, whatever you want.
So what benefit would an internal auditor be to us? Ms. Hanson?
It's just an extra layer of
So I actually have,
Fiscal responsibility that the board chooses.
So like what happened recently probably would not have happened because there would have been policies and procedures in place.
What happened recently
With
regarding?
it was in the news, the doctor's inlet case.
That is specifically with he or she would not be responsible for that.
That wouldn't be
They would
that.
But
be
internal
responsible.
but there would have been
Internal
policies-
accounts.
Right, but
Yes.
there would have been policies and procedures and oversight and things in place to help examples like that.
Which we already have.
well,
No,
Ms.
Ms. Bola, that's not accurate.
Joe Housen specifically said that it would be my job to bring information to the board that I called for the meeting, and I have not yet had a chance to actually go through the research that I've gathered to give to the board. There is a distinct role, government audits versus internal auditors. Distinct role. They do have something in common, so if we're ready to hear about this. So the distinct role is operational effectiveness and financial transparency. Government audits, I'm going to quote because I'm not an expert on this. Let me get to I have it written down here, my agenda. So the differences between internal and external audits. And I do realize that part of this was to explain all of our audits that we do and are required to have annually and then every 3 years. So when you're talking about objectives, for instance, internal audits improve internal controls, risk management, and operational efficiency. You have to understand that that is different than our external audits when it comes outside, especially as a government entity. External audits assure stakeholders about financial accuracy and compliance. The objectives are completely different. So once again, internal audits done by an internal auditor who reports to the board is to improve internal controls. As Ms. Skipper said, based on recent events, we can absolutely improve our internal controls and our risk management. When it comes to the scope of internal audits, according to Florida statute, if we have an internal auditor that reports to the board, they have full access to every single document, email, they have full access to everything and every document that we own. So internal audits cover finance, compliance, operations, and risk management. Our external audits that are required focus on financial statements and compliance with accounting standards. That's why you see Dr. Legecko giving all these beautiful Excel charts, because that is what the government, our external audits, expect from her. When it comes to reporting, as you know, internal audit findings go to us. They help a board with risk management. They help a board figure out where we can save money or make cuts, where we may be wasting money, whereas external audit findings are communicated to shareholders through reports. It is a completely different set of audits. And when it comes to frequency and timing, our external audits are annual or tri. They are required audits that we must do. But internal audits are periodic, can be based on board requests. They are balancing routines that check in-depth assessments that help us be transparent. So what we're talking about here is the legislators are no fools. The reason there is a law for that is because external audits check for stakeholders. What internal auditors do, they work for us to help us with transparency and to make sure, as a board, we are not only locked tight in our procedures, but we have a way to see what might be going well and what can we improve on. So Ms. Bola, as you were asking, what we were just talking about has nothing to do with the role of the board's internal auditor. So if Ms. Skipper wanted to know how we could save money, so let's just say we want to use more technology and less printing. Maybe we want to invest in DocuSign for everyone when it comes to paperwork. I'll give you an example. The technology that we're using right now for the student nurse form that we do each year and for the media policy is going to be cost effective for us as well. Never mind man hours. The board, through the internal auditor, can request where we would like this person to look. As for the cost, we recently created an allocation for an internal, Dr. Legecko, was it an internal accounts manager?
Yes.
And so I would tell you that finding an auditor is not going to break the bank. We could also convert that allocation, the board would have to vote, use the funds that we were going to use towards that allocation and hire an internal auditor. In fact, if we are concerned with internal accounts, that could be the focus of the internal auditor. So what you have to understand is, I guess my question would be to anyone, what would be a legitimate reason that we would not want someone to help us with monitoring our finances, tightening up where we can, and making sure that we are safe? So this is the problem I'm having. Why are we arguing or just dissing this idea that legislatively it is within our right, whether we are at 500 million, 450, or 600 million, it does not matter. Why would a single person on our board not want to have some controls within that has no conflicting interest to make sure that taxpayer dollars are taken care of?
I don't think anybody's arguing that. Where I remember us leaving this conversation at our last meeting was we asked for an opinion from Mr. Walker as to what the state statute requires, are we doing what's required? And then if it doesn't require it, I remember we also had the conversation of wanting to know what would be the cost, and we had conversations about what would be the benefits and the disadvantages. And you know, to me, that's all important, pertinent information that we need before we make a decision as a board whether to pursue hiring that position or not. So, you know, at this workshop meeting, this budget workshop meeting, we can decide as a board that we would specifically like that information so that we can make a decision as to whether or not to pursue hiring.
I agree with you. The other thing is, we should be careful interpreting law, because in fact, if we think, oh, no, we're not at 500 million, so maybe we don't need one, or, we are at 500 million, Ms. Skipper believes we are, the district doesn't believe we are. If you ask me, we say we should make some kind of a decision thinking about the fact that whether we are at 500 million or not, we're close, and maybe moving forward. So I agree with you, Ms. Gilhousen.
No, I don't disagree. It does certainly seem that we're on the precipice, but I just want, excuse me, I want clarity, like you said, for the purpose of transparency, so that we can say to the taxpayers that we're being proactive, that it's not required of us, but we're pursuing it because it's almost required of us. Or the message is, it is required, we must do this. So I just want it to be very clear, if we are going to add an expensive position, potentially, that reports directly to the board, I want to have very clear messaging as to why we chose to do that.
Well, I thought we asked for that last
We
workshop.
did.
And so that's what I'm saying, and now we're at
I'm not
this
sure that
workshop.
I'm not sure that anybody understood the purpose of this budget workshop meeting. I thought Ms. Hanson wanted a budget workshop, but we didn't say specifically what part of the budget. We certainly didn't say we wanted to discuss this position specifically. So
We did say we wanted to discuss the internal auditor.
The position I did, but I was not specific, Madam Chair, about the rest of the budget meeting.
Yeah, I don't think we were specific. We wanted the information, we didn't give a deadline, and we didn't say we wanted it by this workshop, or that the purpose of this workshop was to determine if we're going to pursue that position. I understand
Does
your
Mr.
question.
Blocker know if, in fact, the interpretation, whose interpretation of the law is right? Ms. Skipper or the
We have an
district?
attorney that we pay, so let's
Sure.
ask him. He's the only
Sure.
one who has to
Absolutely.
certify the state of Florida every year.
Mr. Blocker.
Through the chair, so again, as Mrs. Hanson, I think you and I had briefly spoken about this, I've talked to a couple of y'all. We have a state statute that is clearly written. The challenge is I think we're right on the cusp of having that. So y'all as a board can make a decision if y'all want to expend funds and hire an internal auditor. There's certainly, that's a policy decision. That's a policy decision that y'all can make. We're probably going to be there very quickly because Clay County's growing. So y'all certainly can, there are good policy sound reasons to do that. I think originally what Dr. Legayco and I had spoken about is that there is sometimes different interpretations of the statute, which is not unusual. You have 100 attorneys in the room, and they might have a different interpretation of it. I'm not going to put her on the spot. I could probably ask my colleague. She may have a different interpretation of this as well. That's because different lawyers interpret this differently. I try to look at the language itself. It does say 500 million. The legislature put that in there specifically for that threshold. So if we're at 500 million, then we need to probably hire an internal auditor. If we're close to that, then that's a policy decision if y'all want to move forward with that. As far as the debt service versus its expenditures, I think we could call each of the 67 school districts and probably their financial, chief of finance and their attorneys, and probably the superintendent are going to have a different view on that. So I think ultimately, not to put this back on the board, but y'all are going to have to make a decision. If we're not at the 500, what's the number again? Because I've heard different numbers.
459.
About 459, through the audit, review.
So you guys are very close to that. Clay County's growing, people are moving here, so you're probably going to be at the 500 million. I mean, is that a fair assessment based on the projections?
I would say probably in about 2, maybe 3 years. The reason we were so high is because of the ESSER funds, and those are going away.
Understood, so that's a consideration, but y'all are one of the fastest growing counties in the state
But
of
yes,
Florida.
there's a possibility.
Right, so you're probably highly likely, so you are going to get there. And the reason the legislature, if you look at the legislative notes on this, because we have the benefit of understanding why this came to the legislature. Let's be clear, sometimes the state legislature, when they're writing these, we've had a lot of changes in educational law recently, right? So the legislature is weighing in on this, they're providing us some more input, but the purpose for this was to give board, because ultimately y'all are responsible for the budget, to give y'all some additional mechanisms for accountability and so on and so forth. So I think to answer your question, Mrs. Hanson, the definitive answer is if we're at 500 million, then y'all probably need to go ahead and move forward. If you're not, that is a board policy decision, to work with the superintendent. I did want to, if I may, if Madam Chair, if I may bring something up. I've heard a couple of y'all bring up about board materials being brought together. One of y'all did reach out to me yesterday. I did speak with the superintendent. I will work closely with the superintendent to make sure y'all's board policies on this, if you look at Rule 1.02, Section 4, and I'll read it out loud if I may, says each individual school board member is entitled to full information and data necessary in his or her judgment to the proper casting of a vote on any matter which comes before the school board for action. So having said that, we will work with y'all to make sure that these board materials are provided to y'all in advance so you can make an informed decision. And part of that is communication. We need to make sure that if it's not being provided, you don't have it, talk to the superintendent, talk to me. We'll make sure that y'all have that as well. And make sure there's clarity, because I think today when I spoke with Dr. Legecko and the superintendent, I think we were thinking this is more of a broader budget work, but then I spoke with a couple of y'all, and I think there's some more specifics. So I think we can do a better job working with y'all, making sure, but you need to be able to have the materials, and we as staff need to provide you the materials so you can make an informed, educated decision. So, thank you, Madam Chair. Are there any questions on that, or?
So, Madam Chair.
I don't know if it's statute or if it's ours. I think it's statute 120.525, meetings, hearings, and workshop. It says that agenda shall be prepared by the agency in time to ensure that a copy of the full agenda will be received at least 7 days before the event by any person in the state who requests a copy. And it goes on to say that the agenda, along with any meeting materials, are available in electronic form, excluding confidential and exempt information. So a couple of things that I take from this is, one, and I've asked a dozen times or more, please give us, and I know that Ms. Clark has asked many, many times for processing time, give us more time to see things. I also want to say that as a newer board member, I am totally up to speed now, because when Ms. Gilhausen said, we do need to be more specific about what we want to talk about and absolutely state what it is we would like to discuss. So I am a new board member, so I apologize. I knew that I wanted to talk about internal auditors. I had talked to Mr. Brodsky of what can we do to increase our fund balance, and I asked him about that a month ago. I don't know how it wasn't more specific, but I promise from now on, I will be very specific when asking Ms. Gilhausen. I will do better.
Mr. Baca.
Yes, I was just Mrs. Hanson, just to respond, you are correct, there is a statute that does cover that. Part of that is to make sure the public, if there's an agenda and an agenda packet, that's so government does not hide the ball. That statute is geared more toward, my interpretation is more geared towards the general public. That's why the agendas are created, and if there's board material, that way the public's not being prepared. So the goal behind that would be, 2 or 3 weeks out of a board meeting, if there's materials, we're not withholding that from the public so they can have it. My understanding is, and this is just from working in government, there are going to be occasions when you're going to have some of this material being prepared really just a few days before. Over this weekend, I had the pleasure of speaking with the superintendent several times as I was going to events. Dr. Legutko, I think other staff, I'm looking around the room, we communicated. I know board members were working this weekend as well. So sometimes some of the material may not be generated and prepared, but I believe that there was some materials that were brought to our attention, and I notified the superintendent to make sure that was sent to, because that should be sent to board members in a timely manner, so y'all can make an educated decision. And your board rules specifically highlight that information should be provided in a timely fashion. So we will do a better, were you gonna say something?
Go ahead, finish.
Okay, so we will do a better job working together with y'all as a board to make sure that we provide that material to you, so.
Dr. Rebecca?
Yes, I wanted to say, as it relates to the budget, remember, as we do this process, it is, we're following TRIM, which has specific dates that we must abide by. That starts July 1. Also in the statute, you will note that the state confirms the property value, and that is done in July. I believe the statute says no later than July 17th. I believe it's in statute that says that. So as I'm preparing the budget, everything is all estimated, and before I can present that budget, I need to provide accurate data as it relates to our property values and what that millage is. So that is why there are times, I will say, that the documents aren't available because, of course, advertising and then waiting for that information. And as you look at the TRIM, there are certain dates, guidelines that I have to follow and bring certain documents to you within a time frame. And as a result of that, that is why some of this, the information that I'm presenting to you through a presentation is so last minute, I guess. But during the TRIM process, you have from the July 23rd meeting all the way through the September final budget hearing to make any sort of changes that you would like to make to that budget document.
Can I ask a quick question? How often do we get money from the state? We get it 4 times a year, correct?
Right, and that was one of the things I was going to go through with the budget process so that we understand.
Well, just...
Is it possible, if I could bring forward moving on this, is it possible for Doc to give a presentation in 20 to 30 minutes, so you can see that? Then we can make a decision on the internal auditor, and then maybe get some clarity as to what you'd like to see. I think what the board is expressing is a frustration that they don't get the chance to weigh in on their priorities into the budget process and looking for how to do that. You're right, Ms. Gilhousen, anybody's free to say whatever they want at the workshop, and so the people will advocate for whatever idea they want to advocate for, but just for the sake of us moving forward right now, given the discussion where we're at, can we agree to move forward in that direction?
Yep.
Okay. Go ahead, Doc.
Oh, okay.
We're going to go lightning with Gupco. Speed.
All right, lightning. It's going to be really quick then, because again, a lot of this is standard that okay. Okay. So again, because we were unclear as to what we were presenting today, I thought we all thought it would be an overview of what our budget process entails. So several items. We'll go over the budget process. I'll try to be very quick. We'll go over the general funds. We'll go over 1 mil fund and the capital funds. I chose those funds because of the fact that our budget is a very large budget. Of course, you all know what it is, but it entails a lot of different components of that budget. And in order to really go into the details of everyone, we really need a longer time frame to go into that. So with that, we'll just go into, again, let me see, budget update. Again, I have a few notes, I'll just read out some of them. The budget is driven by state statute, as everyone knows. There are multiple components of it. We've got general fund, federal, capital, debt service, internal, and we also have some internal service funds, which we talked about. We didn't talk about. That's internal accounts. We have internal service funds, which is our liability accounts and our self-insurance funds. We try to, okay, so the presentation that you will see is really a comparison to the prior year and the current year. The only thing I'll be able to do with the general fund is present to you a projection on the revenue, only because we have not received that final budget yet. The governor has not signed that budget, and that's one of the components where I'm certain he may veto any one of those line items. So with me planning that and he cuts it, then that's another exercise that we will need to go through and try to present a balanced budget. Never done. I'm sorry. All right. As you know, the budget process is a continuous process throughout the year. It is focused on being reasonable, allocatable, responsible, accountable. So again, we start off with the planning process, and I'll go over that real quick with you all. We try, once we do the planning, we will prepare that budget. I've got, by statute, I have to present a balanced budget, so that's that preparation. Of course, the adoption, that is the role of the board, where I present the balanced budget, so it is adopted. We report on the information, and of course, we monitor it throughout the year. So I would say the monitoring piece is constant, from the planning all the way to planning again, but it's a continuous process. Right now, our auditors are here. The auditors from last year just left. And we just, March, I believe, we received the audit report. Now the AG's office, the Auditor General, is here. Right, a week later, they showed up, and they're starting their pre-process for the current year. And because it's not finished yet, they're just starting their pre-planning, they're looking at data, they're pulling data to present for this year ending school year. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm trying. All right, so as we said, we will go through each component of that process with our budget, and we've got our planning. Again, when we start our budget process, we are focusing on it being reasonable, it being allowable, it's responsible, and we are accountable. You know, accountability means, of course, that we're very transparent with the information that's available on our website. So, again, the start of our budget starts with the project revenue coming in. That is based on our FTE projections. That's the start. And Ms. Hanson said people receive their budget process in January. That is true, but it's based on the FTE projections. That is something that we as a district look at our current enrollment and look at different components of it to decide whether or not there are going to be any changes, any modifications. We ask the operations department, have you seen what's our growth? Are there any new communities coming in? What does that look like? Along with that, of course, the state works with us with their program that decides, you know, birth rates and different types of calculations that's done for us to determine what our projections are going to look like. So it does start in January. And, you know, maybe that is one of our first steps in our budget workshop, is to talk about our projections. So that is the first step in our budget process. Once that's done, then, as you all know, we do have a board-approved allocation plan. We look at that plan and we look at the numbers of students that we plan on having, and we do the calculations based on class size to determine the number of teachers that the schools will need for the upcoming year. So it is based also, again, it's all projections. Everything is projections. So we look at the allocation plan, we create the allocation proposal, of which is brought to the board for approval, right? Once that's done, because that is, you know, keep in mind that the majority of our funds support personnel. Over 80% of our funds go towards salaries and benefits. So with that, once that is done, then I can look at, okay, what are the next things that I need to support in our budget? So we're looking through, we go through multi-step reviews of all of the budget information. What did we spend last year? What are the contracts that are coming up? What is the renewal? What are the increases that we will experience as we're going through this process? Of course, I talked about the truth and millage, the TRIM guideline, that starts July 1 every year. That is statutorily required. And of course, there are certain guidelines that we have to follow as a government agency to ensure that we alert our taxpayers of the millage, which in turn decides what the percentage of local property taxes that we need to generate. It's called required local effort in order to generate X amount of dollars from the state. And all of that is really based on our FTE projections. So, as we're going through this, we do a contract review. We look at all of our contracts that we do have. And of course, each one of those contracts do come, based on our policy, do come before the board so that you are aware of those increases that are affecting that budget. So as you know, this latest agenda, there were several contracts in there that you all are aware of, and it shows what the financial impact is, and of course, it talks about the history of what the cost is and how much it will be for the next year. And again, we go back through the multi-start review. We are constantly reviewing those expenditures. It is a constant review, because I have to, we as a board and as the oversight fiscal responsibility, we have to ensure that we stay within budget. If we're not within budget, then we've got to make adjustments. And a lot of times too is that, throughout the year, once you do your FTE projections, as you know, that is what drives our budget. It's our students. And if we don't come close to what our projections are, we've got to make adjustments. But you know that it's all a projection. I will tell you, it is all a projection till the following school year, September of the next fiscal year. So, with that being said, throughout the year, we do have counts to ensure that our numbers are close to what we projected. If it's not, we have to make adjustments within the budget that's already been approved to ensure that we still stay within a balance, we still have a balanced budget. As a result, those are the budget amendments that are brought to you every month. And of course approved through the financial statements. All right. I'm trying to go as fast as I can. I'm sorry. All right, so that's the preparation. Now we are at the adoption. We went through the same, as of course it's the presentation that I do bring to you, and we adopt the budget. It's a tentative budget, and in your packet you do have the TRIM calendar, so it's a separate sheet. The first budget workshop is on July 23rd, is where I will bring you the tentative budget. At that time, or between now and then, of course, and based on the conversation, if there are certain areas that you all would like to focus on, please let us know, and we'll try to get that. We will get the information to you so that you have it at the time of this workshop. Again, it's a tentative budget workshop, a tentative budget presentation where we go into the entire budget. So it'll take about a good 2 hours, maybe 2+ hours to go into details of the specifics of that budget. And that's where I go into every fund, every component of that, of the budget. All right, the reporting. Okay, what do I have here? All right, the reporting. We do try to, we are reporting on the budget that's being presented throughout the school year. As you know, the monthly expenditure, the financial report, we are working on making sure that it's more detailed, so you'll be receiving updated materials, I believe, for the budget amendment. I've tried to add some information to it, so before the next board meeting you should have a summary page that identifies all of the transactions that impacted the budget. our monthly financial statements. Those are presented to you on every month. It is required, it's statutorily required. And it's presented in a manner that we are responsible to present it to, and it's based on statutory. What are we supposed to present? And if you compare it to all the other districts, we try to be consistent across the state as to what we present to our board. And of course, as you know, we talk about audits. We do a lot of annual audits. There are several of them that we do go through throughout the school year. So not only are we trying to operate our budget and continue to serve our students and our teachers or our staff, we are constantly working with different agencies throughout the year that's asking for detailed information about our expenditures, about what we're doing. Some of it is specific, some of it is overall, general, that we are giving this data to. IT is involved, where they are asked, what sort of data are we allowed to present or to give to these folks, for privacy laws and that good stuff. Okay. All right. And of course, we're in monitoring, right? Yes. Oh my goodness. All right, we're in monitoring. What we do is we have a workflow process. So, we talk about what our role is. Well, we constantly, there is checks and balances in place to ensure that the expenditures or the request for any kind of expenditure is properly reviewed, vetted, and make sure that it is what, I'm going blank now. What our, oh my gosh, I can't think. All right, it's a workflow process. It is properly vetted. It is, for instance, let me go through contract review. It is, contract is initiated at the office that's initiating that contract. It is then presented through certain offices. Number one, it goes through, if it's a school, it goes through the chiefs, of which they review to ensure that it meets the strategies of our strategic plan, right? And then, of course, it comes to, once it goes through the chief that's responsible for that division or that contract, then it really goes through our purchasing department. It actually goes through our attorney as well. Their office reviews those contracts to ensure legal responsibility in for purchasing. We go through it based on purchasing guidelines, and then of course it's presented to the board for approval, for final approval. Okay? So hopefully. All right. We talk about audits, and as we're going through it, I wanted to show you all the different audits that we do have. We're constantly going through. So I'm going to just click on all of these right away. As you can see, the first three are the Auditor General and the Independent Auditing Firm. The Independent Auditing Firm comes every year. The Auditor General comes once every 3 years, and they do audit the previous years of the private agency. The federal audits, federal and state, those are program audits that they do come from DOE. There's Title I there are desktop audits, and there are face-to-face audits where they do look at the details of the expenditures to ensure that it is it's aligned with the application that was submitted and approved by the Department of Education. We do have, and those are all programs audited. Workforce development, ESOL. Food service is also audited. They are audited by the, oh my goodness, where is it? The agency for, what is the? Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer. Thank you. So that is an external auditing agency that comes in and audits our food service program. They also look at the financial part of it. The Medicaid, they are constantly being audited for the use of those funds as well as the services that are being reported for that program. Another audit that's very important is our FTE audit. That one is done by the Department of Education, and they audit the student enrollment to ensure that we are reporting our program numbers, the students in the correct program areas. And if there are any discrepancies, it is, we pretty much have to pay back those dollars, and it's usually a year or two later. And it's not that we're paying it back, it's that the state just automatically takes the funds of our revenue in that particular year. We have technology audits where they come in, and these are constant every year. You know, we have technology audit, which again, they're looking at different areas of our program to ensure fraud is not happening, to ensure that we have proper securities in place so that, you know, transfer of funds, different things are in place so that we are not subject to fraud or to, you know, loss of funds. And you are familiar with the OPAGA audit. Used to in the past, and OPAGA means Office of Program and Policy Program. I can't remember the full thing. Anyway, they used to come in every other year, but through budget cuts, they decided that they stopped. And of course, the legislature changed the language to where that if a district is going out for a referendum, you do have to have an audit conducted by the OPAGA team, which is a branch of the legislative office. Okay? And of course, the one we just recently went through is our financial disclosure. It was through our credit agency, Standard & Poor's, I believe, or Fitch. And what that is really where we go through an intense, rigorous financial audit. And it's not just financial statements they're looking at. They're looking at whether our district is capable of paying back the money that we are wanting to borrow. We just did a successful COPS issue of about $52 million. And before we can even do that, we had to go through a truly rigorous financial question investigation, audit, where they asked so many questions about whether or not we are, how we're spending our money, how our fund balance is going to be in the future. Would we be able to pay this debt back that we borrowed? And we were very successful. We received a good credit rating. As you know, it's just like your credit report. If you have bad credit, you get no funds, or you get a really bad percentage. You have to have you borrow on a high percentage. If you have a good credit rating, then you are able to purchase, you have good credit worthiness. So therefore, you're able to borrow those funds, and we were very successful at that. Thank you. So, I'm proud of that one. So, okay. So I'm going to go through this really fast, but this slide really, what I wanted you all to see, and really the public, is here's our FEFP formula. This is where we get our funds from. This is the detail of what our process goes through, and we're still waiting to find out whether or not I am going to get the $364 million in state and local funding. This is just a general fund. And remember, this formula changes, and the empty boxes are those areas where before the funds were categorical, like for instance instructional materials. They were categorical funds where I had to specifically set aside those funds to spend on media, books and things like that. Well, they removed it and placed it up here in the base student allocation, up here, where they said the board will decide how much money is going to be spent for instructional materials. However, they didn't change the statute where it says you will do an adoption this year, and this is how much it's going to cost. So those are the details that I would really love to provide to you as a board. Remember I said January, how we do the projections? There's that number I use. This is what our projections are for next year, 41,441.17 in students, FTE, not belly buttons, but FTE. And based on that, this is what I'm projecting. But also you can see the Family Empowerment Scholarship. That has increased so much from the start of, it's now $22 million. It's going to come off the top from our revenue that we are expected to receive. So this is just a quick summary. Again, this is our general fund revenue. As you can see, this is the different types of revenues. This is total revenue that we're expected to receive. I budget about $377 million. This is just based on what we know right now. This could change. This number could change and this number could change because we don't know what our property values are right now. We get that on July 1st. And this state revenue could change because if the governor vetoes any one of those boxes that I showed you, then this number could either increase or decrease. It just depends what happens when he signs that budget, which he has not done right now as of today. So we're still in limbo trying to figure out whether or not what revenues we're going to get. So that's why I said I'm only going to show you this current year right now. So again, this chart represents our FTE for the last several years. And just a pictorial view of really where our funds were going. So again, scholarships came into play. Here's where it was, that low blue. Look how high this has gone up. It went from about $1 million here back in 1920. Actually, it even wasn't that much. It was just the McKay scholarships, I believe, right? To now it's over $22 million. So you can see the growth of that program. And of course, our charter schools and our traditional schools. Okay, so looking at the revenue and what we think we're going to receive, based on the information, this $17 million increase is based on the increase in enrollment and the BSA, the cost per student. So the legislature gave us a little more money this year. So after we take care of some of the main costs that and taking out categoricals, taking out the scholarships, and I'm left with about $17 million to work with. So that $17 million now has to take into effect, okay, what's our health insurance increase for our employees? What's the FRS rates? That's something I can't avoid. I have to pay for that. So that comes with the state. Liability insurance, of course, like everything else, it goes up. Energy, utilities, everyone knows that goes up as well. And ESOL program support. Other primary costs that I've got to look at is compensation. Any of the choice programs, are we expanding? What are we doing with that? Instructional materials. We have an adoption. It's about $8 million. We usually get about $3 million in instructional materials. So where am I going to find the additional funds to meet that statutory requirement? And of course, the operational, any type of contracts where there's inflationary costs that's attached to it, I've got to take that into consideration.
Dr. Legato, with instructional materials, can that come from capital money or does that have to come from the general fund?
It comes from general fund. You cannot use capital funds for instructional materials unless it is part of the original construction, the new school that's being built. Okay? All right, I'm trying to speed it up, I promise. All right, so here's a comparison of our expenditures for 22-23 and 23-24. And again, if you want to see specifics, details of what this represents, please call my office. I can provide that information to each one of you. As you can see, the box, the salaries and benefits make up the highest expense that we incur throughout the school year.
So I think this would be a good time to have the conversation, Ms. Skipper, about what you guys keep asking for, the itemized budget.
See, I've asked for an itemized budget several times before.
Right, but this is where I think specifically we could say you're wanting an itemized budget of purchase services. What are, you see where this is broken down into
Right.
chunks? So salaries and benefits, would you want it itemized there? Would you want?
I mean, in certain situations, because, I mean, I guess, yeah, all the way across the board, I would like a itemized line item budget. That is something that we should have.
So every salary paid at every school and every district office?
Within every project, within everything. We can provide that to you. That is a huge report that we provide to the auditors, detailed. So if you would like to get a detail of salaries and benefits, I would need a little more specifics. How would you like me to present? I could give you a big old spreadsheet and, you know, so how would you like it in fund format? Because there's different funding. How would, different projects, there are multiple projects that's aligned with the general fund. I mean, you've got reading, you've got, give me a...
Okay, so like
mental health, you've got all these different, so how would you like us to present this to you? And we can...
Dr. Legreco, can I ask something real quick?
Yes.
I can just give an example. Do you remember at the last workshop I handed you, I believe it was from the monthly school board financial reports that you gave us, and I handed you a sheet of paper that had, I think it was the Hampton sales tax. And on it, I had written, there was things like minus 75,000, and I wrote on there what was the 75,000 for.
Right.
I really believe these are simple things that we can actually do on the monthly reports.
Yes.
So that anybody can see what the 75,000 was for versus just putting 75,000 minus on there.
Right.
And I have asked for a calculator, which I guess we can't afford, but other counties do, where people can, literally, this would solve a lot of our problems, we wouldn't even have to talk about it, but literally people can go in and click on school level and see where the funds came from and what projects are going on at their schools and where the money came from. We don't have a transparency system like that. So when you get the financial reports, the monthly reports, and you see something that's like half-cent sales tax, and there's literally no information on there, there's no way that people can connect that to going to a different website to see what we're spending our money on. Really, I think we have a communication issue that is creating a transparency issue, if that makes sense.
Right. What I've done since I received that information, I will be adding, we're working on it right now, but it will be added before the board meeting, and an email will come out to let you know the changes. And that was a budget amendment report that you provided to me.
I don't remember the name of it.
Yes, it was the budget amendment report. And what I've done is I've done a summary page that identifies the different funds and specifically the increase and decreases to the revenue and what they mean and what it is really specifically. And then, of course, on the expenditure side, why did we move the money from one area to another and that impact? So it's more of an impact statement as to the numbers that you're looking at. So hopefully that will provide some transparency to the public and to the board. If that's not sufficient, by all means, please reach out to me and give me a suggestion on what exactly you would like to see, and we'll try to work on with it. If that means I have to increase, you know, our budget towards getting a system that will allow us to be able to do that, then I will present it to the board, and the board can decide whether or not you're willing to spend the funds to increase
So how
that
much
exercise.
how much is like Duval, their transparency button that Ms. Hanson has asked?
The calculator?
For the calculator for like for a year now. Does anybody know, and this, since she's asked for it and has replied that it's too expensive,
I'm
how
not
much is
sure.
that?
Have we looked at that to see exactly what it is they...
Well, I was given a number from the IT department of 25 million, but I also have done research on that. I honestly believe that the entire issue that we're having just comes from the lack of communication piece. There has to be a better way for taxpayers not to scroll through our website looking for certain departments and different folders and years. There has to be a better way for under the school board tab for people to see how we're spending taxpayer dollars. Maybe it's not the $25 million calculator. But I can tell you, like we just talked about, a simple thing we can do is when the board votes yes to create a new allocation, there should be a memo about where that money's coming from or where we cut money to create a new position.
Right.
So there are things we can do. It would be great if we had a place in a simple way for people to see. And by the way, if we want these renewed, the 1% mill, we should feel obligated to make it easier for our taxpayers to see what a great job we're doing. That's how you get a renewal of the 1%. I can't imagine what life would be without that 1% mill renewal. So we need to spend some time and thought thinking about how to be easily transparent, because legislation says that it must be understandable and easy for the taxpayers to understand.
Ms. Hanson, can I get my question answered? Has anybody looked at that calculator? And anybody know how much it is?
We've not really, we've looked at what Duval has been presenting, and we are working, we did do, have a dashboard that we're working with, trying to ensure that we can sort of mimic, we can't do exactly what they're doing, because Duval is a larger county with a lot more money than we have. So therefore, we're looking at what they've done and see what we can do to make our transparency page for financial reporting a lot more easier for our taxpayers. Again, it doesn't happen overnight, so we are working on trying to make sure that maybe for in the next fiscal year, we do have some sort of access to the data that you're asking for.
So Dr. Legucco, I believe it's 1 year to this month ago that I asked for us to start working on this. Are you saying it could take another year?
Excuse me. I know you asked for it, and we have made progress where we added an additional component. I believe we brought that contract to you. It's for BP, Business Plus, and they are working on it so that we can, they're working on the dashboard that can be used. I don't know right now the status of it. I will find out, but I can let you know. But we are working on it and trying to meet the deadline for next year.
So if I could just draw to a conclusion to this portion of our discussion. What I'm understanding is that, like, right now I'm looking at our June board meeting budget amendment update, and I'm looking at the additional millage fund statement of expenditures and transfers. And so we have a line item of the original budget and the amended budget. And then we have where the money is being spent. So for example, in salaries, operation of plant is 2.5 million that's being expended. And then it says employee benefits 1.1 million, purchase services 2.5 million. So if what I'm understanding, Ms. Skipper, with those monthly reports, if that were itemized, would that be
Itemized, and where is it coming from? Which I know
Well, these
a lot
are
of-
expenditures. So it's telling you the category that it comes from is the millage. So the millage is what's being spent. And then it tells you it's being spent on operation of plant salaries, operation of plant benefits.
Right, I would like an itemized every time, so that I know that, hey, we paid, maintenance salary, 5 maintenance people
So that's what
salary,
operations
whatever.
is.
Right, that's what I'm saying, but I want it broke down, like, people want this stuff broke down, you're sitting here saying that, especially the general fund. Anything within the general fund, it goes into one pot, a whole big pot, is how people view this. I know in her head it's completely different, so I guess this is my perspective. As an ER nurse, I don't walk into a room and give a diagnosis in medical terms at all. Because 9 times out of 10, no matter what background or employment they are, if they're not medical, it's just going to go right here. and they're gonna say, can you not necessarily use smaller words, but use smaller words. Let me know I have fluid building up instead of calling it edema, right? So for taxpayer purposes, not everybody is an accountant, not everybody's a CPA, not everybody's a CFO, not everybody, does numbers. There are people who read and love literature and do all this, and their brain works completely different. That being said, we have to, I don't want to say this and, let me see, dumb it down, but you have to, in layman ways, and show people what they're truly looking at. Because in your head, it makes sense. In my head, when I'm speaking medical, it makes sense. But when you're sitting there talking to taxpayers who all they see, especially in this economy, is, hey, you know what? School board just took all my money. I'm so sick of, and I hear this all the time. I get phone calls from family members and they're like, why do you keep taking my money? And I'm like, well, first of all, it was on the ballot and you voted on it. So there's that on certain things. And then other things, we break it down. However, that's what they're not seeing. And when you have a transparency button where I can say, hey, go to the website, and that's completely, and here again, Ms. Bowler, you're not understanding what we're requesting, what I'm asking.
Correct, because I am looking at the financial transparency.
Correct.
And I'm looking at Ed First Half Cent, I'm looking at financial transparency report, I'm looking at the opportunity to see individual schools and where they're at in their finances. And I'm hearing what you're asking for, but then when you're saying Citizen Q comes in and says, well, why are you taking all my money? And I've had the same questions with Skipper. And I directed them to this and said, go to this particular half-cent sales tax. That's exactly what we're spending your money on. This is why we're spending your money on this, and this is what you voted on. I mean,
But that's just one example. They're also wanting to know why teachers don't have X, Y, and Z. Why do they have to have examples like tools for schools? Why are we not providing it for them? Why are we not doing this? Why are we not doing that? So when they see or hear of, which I don't know what it was, but it was a couple months ago, you presented a document predicting that our projected budget was going to be somewhere between $600 million this year. That's where I'm getting this number. I didn't just make it up. That blows their mind. They're trying to figure out, what are we doing as a school district with $600 million? And then that's when I have to educate them, certain dollars can't go to building, certain dollars can't go but to education, whatever. But my point is if they can see it and understand it, they would be less hostile. And that's what they're asking. They want to know this.
So,
can I, if you go to our website, Ms. Bowler, since you're on the computer looking around,
Ms. Hanson.
and you click on school board,
Ms. Gilhousen.
and you do that, you're gonna see it says meet the school board members, school board quickly, school board policies. The majority of districts in the state of Florida right away have a transparency button.
and it's on the front.
You actually have to go looking for transparency when you go to our website.
I went to,
In a direct link. Part of statute says it needs to be easily accessible, transparent, and understandable. If I go to the school board site, I shouldn't have to be a school board member telling people how to go look at something. This is the point. We are doing things right. But the way we systematically go about it tends to look misleading when we say under the school board is our budget and you can't even find it.
I didn't go to.
So this is what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the fact that you, Ms. Boland, know where to look for the information. That would be inaccessible to a regular person. You're a school board member. Because I, at this point, couldn't tell you exactly the easiest way to go look at these things. And that tells me we have a problem.
Well, I would say that they use
I would say the board, if you guys would do some research and start going to other people's, just their school board sites, you will see lots of ways to look at transparency. It might not be the $25 million dashboard, all right? But I am telling you, the way we are set up, it looks like we are not transparent at all.
So if I could, I'm hearing the conversation around transparency. Can we research how other districts format their website, provide more transparency, move the button around so it's more transparent and do those kinds of things.
So we've asked for that, so I want to be
I
very
have
clear. We've
many
asked
times asked for it last
several
year.
months ago.
Well, let's
Um,
not go back, please.
Well, I know, but like,
Let's
can we
go
make sure that we
forward.
actually do it?
That's what we're
Is
There is
trying
a-
to do right now. I
And
think.
work has been done, and you can see that the transparency part, but apparently it's not as accessible, which is an issue.
So we need to move it to the top.
So we'll work on moving the button to make it more accessible.
Thank you, Dr. Legacy.
Okay, let me finish, let's finish this. Okay, so again, here's another way of looking at our expenditures by object, so you can see where the majority of our funds are being spent, which is standard, it's in salaries and benefits. So, and then the different components of it, so. Okay. Okay, so now we'll just kind of glance over the 1 mil and how those funds are being spent. So as you can see, since the inception of the program, this is our 1 mil total cost. As you can see, it's personnel cost, which is the salaries and benefits, the interlocal agreements that we do have, purchase services, our capital costs, and fuel costs for the officers' cars, their operational expenditures, and of course the cell phones that they maintain. And this is up until the 23-24, and keep in mind, we are not finished with this school year. We still have we have the month of May we're paying bills on, and of course June is coming up. So that number is going to change in the July 23rd presentation. Okay. So here you can see examples of how we're spending our dollars. So for Fund 105, which is the 1 mil, you can see that these are some of the, going back on the equipment, oh my goodness, the capital cost and the capital cost. This is how that is being spent. The funds are being spent on the different types of activities at the schools. Okay. Move on. Okay, so the other part of the 1 mil is the CCSO expenditures. So I wanted to show you what the budget was and what we've actually spent so far. So our budget is about 4.7. Of course, our actual is 3.7. I believe we'll be close to this number because we haven't paid out all our salaries. We still have salaries compensation to pay out. Of course, we're trying to pay our bills out right now. We're trying to close the school year and ensure that all our bills are paid within the school year those funds were generated. For next year, our budget planning, our contract right now is about 6.3 million. That's a new contract that you will see. It has gone up a little bit. I think it's now 6.8 million that we revised. This was the transition cost that we paid for this year.
And just if I can interrupt, Susan, I'm Dr. Legacy. Very briefly, and that change in the Sheriff's Department's contract was based on that their original terms did not allow for any type of buffer or anything like that. So we've gone back to the Sheriff's Department, so we're not dealing with budget amendments mid-year. So if a car breaks down, we're not. So that was essentially a bare bones contract. So again, generally you want to have some built-in buffer of some sort. So that's kind of what we negotiate with the sheriff is to allow some type of that. And then in the next budget cycle, we'll come back. If it looks like their costs are going to run over, that way we have some coverage there. So we're not breaking budget amendments.
And a buffer, meaning if they don't use it, then it comes back.
Absolutely correct. Yes, ma'am. That's correct. So those funds will be returned, and we have the terms in place to do that. But we want to make sure it's not necessarily $1 for $1 because they're unforeseen. We could get through COVID. We have active hurricane season, so.
Right. And of course, the terminal pay, which I really should have said, end of year of the contracts, because that includes the terminal pay of the officers that we will be paying out, and of course, the cost of closing the office with the cell phones and all of those things. There's a cost of reducing those contracts.
Also picking, I'm sorry, they're also selecting their insurance plan as well, which is not due until October.
Right.
So there's some cost.
There. Okay, so then, again, the cost per officer per school, I wanted to sort of give you a pictorial view of what that would be. So again, we've got the district school, Green Cove Springs, Orange Park, and then of course the sheriff's office, and it's what for each year.
Can I quick make a comment about the 1 mil, if I may?
Yes.
I've been asked numerous times by people, well, now that the sheriff's office is going to be taking over the 1 mil, or taking over safety and security, the school district will no longer need that money.
No.
And I want to make sure that this goes out on record, that the 1 mil pays for safety and security, and that we have to pay the sheriff's office, plus meet all the requirements for the hardening of the schools that is going to be coming up because of legislative mandate. And that 1 mil obviously is not going to go as far.
Madam Chair, if I could just,
And I hope that in 3 years or 2 years, we can vote on it again and gain the public's trust in maintaining it.
and just a reminder to the board, so the county commission does not provide funding
No.
to this. So as an example, when I was in St. John's, we provided additional funding for it. So all y'all's funding, not all of it, but most of it is going to come from that 1 mil.
That
So
is correct.
y'all would absolutely need that 1 mil so we can maintain this contract. I just want to make sure we're clear on that.
I understand, and that contract's going to get even more expensive.
And I want to reiterate that we really absolutely will need that 1 mil. The revenue that's generating from that fund is to support safety and security, hardening of our schools, as well as providing the officers at each school. If for any reason those funds go away, it's a large amount, and the general fund cannot absorb that. If not, there'll be decisions that need to be made at that point, where the board, hard decisions would need to be made of what we would like to maintain, because this is statutorily required. We have to do this. So, I just want to put on record to say that.
You and I both.
All right, so now we will go into the capital funds. But really, I'm going to focus on just the Ed First dollars, the referendum with the half-cent sales tax, because this is part of our capital funds. So as we get into the details of the different funds, I will explain the difference between the capital funds and the sales tax funds. So again, this is just a pictorial view on 22-23, how we spend our sales tax funds. These are the different projects that they will focus on specifically, so you can see where in 22-23 the cost of the different areas, or the percentage of where the funds were spent on and what they were spent on. So you can see this. Now you'll see in the green we've got new classrooms, and then this is the current year right now. Well, these are the dollars that's associated with and the projects and the cost of the projects associated with the 22-23 pie chart that you just saw. This goes with this, so you can see the details of how, and if you want specific, then you can reach out to the operations department and they'll give you specific projects and whatnot. And I believe the committee that was formed, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Through the chair. Just want to reiterate that we have a committee, a half-cent sales tax citizens advisory committee that goes through on a quarterly basis. We all meet in the evening quarterly, and they go through each one of our project files, and they basically audit our project files for every half-cent sales tax project that we are either conducting or have finished out. So that is specifically audited by that oversight committee.
Thank you.
What is that, new locatables?
I gotta look into that. I need to look into that because on whether new relocatables, I don't know if it's roofing on the relocatables or we haven't purchased relocatables. So we have not purchased relocatables. I'll look into that.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. So, and this is our current expenditures right now. Again, this chart may change a little bit, but basically these are the projects that we have spent our dollars on this year for 23-24. Okay? And again, you'll notice the difference in the pie chart. I just want to bring it out. This new classroom, the reason it's so large is because we opened a new school. so the construction. Yeah. Yeah, you can see the 13 million. Anyway, all right. So again, that's that. These are the expenditures that's associated with that pie chart that shows where those dollars went in relation to the projects. And finally, the fund balance. I know it's very important that we maintain a reasonable fund balance. And as you can see, this is the historical climb to getting back to a fiscally responsible operation. We've been trying, again, we're focusing on a 5%, but again, as you can see, it's a slow growth, but, you know, expenses are in there, so right now we are projected to be about 4.74 ending this year. Again, the year is not over, so I'm hoping my projections are, my ending would be a little higher than my projections. I'm not sure yet, so we'll know. And again, this is also a component of credit history, our credit rating, so credit worthiness, so we need to maintain. And I'll tell you that this 4.74 is about, it's about 20,
Almost 16.7.
oh, okay, yeah, okay. And again, these numbers will change, okay, because this number 16.7 represents the revenue at the time we're receiving. A lot of times when we start our budget, there are grants, there are different things that we're unaware of that's going to come in. So at the end of the year, that number will change to 17, 18, maybe $20 million. So it just depends on your revenue, okay? And let's see. Okay. You know, a lot of times we are recognizing the district for different positive things that we do. Very rare would you hear about finance or any of that. So, you know, again, we did a great job with the accreditation. There was a lot of accolades that represented us for our processes that we have in place. One of the pieces of that component is the fiscal responsibility. And I believe, you know, that did play a role in that process. We also have a lot of, we've had clean audit opinions for the last several years, and that tells me that we are being fiscally responsible with the taxpayers' dollars. Again, I talked about our rating, credit rating. We've maintained a good credit rating over the years and have been able to secure the COPS most recently, and that is the reason, having a good fund balance, being able to financially be responsible for our commitments that we've made throughout the year and staying within our balanced budget and utilizing the revenue that we do receive in order to operate our system and serve our students. I would say we were in a meeting, Ms. Hanson was in that meeting, where there was a document that was released to all the other participants, where they said, when you look at those numbers, we were in the top 10 lowest administrative cost per unweighted FTE. What that means is that we are spending less on the administrative part of this operation, less on those dollars, versus we're spending all of our dollars in our classrooms, in our schools. And of course, we received the accolades for the 10% top 10 lowest energy costs per annual in our cost report. It provides us with how are we spending our the different components of our budget, you know, energy, purchasing, those different areas. And we were in the top 10 lowest. And let's see. So,
and speaking of that, I'll just interject, that's one of the things I would like to see is what I consider overhead administrative, you know, what that percentage is. We're talking 4%, 8 versus 8%. You know, those are some of the things that individually I can ask you.
of course, yes.
Very helpful.
All right, and then my closing remarks. It's a little different than what we started off with compared to what I've heard. But I do want to thank the team that helped me put this presentation together. We did spend time focusing on this, not knowing what we were going to present. So I wanted to thank my team here, which is Sonia Finley, who is the Director of Finance, Michelle Newell, who is her assistant or coordinator of accounting, who works a lot with our self-insurance fund, where we went self-insured, and then, of course, reporting, and Kyle Seymour, who is our budget supervisor. And I would like to thank Kelly for her assistance in this as well. And I would just like to thank everyone for listening to me. Thank you. I would like to be very transparent. I know I am very transparent. And I know if anyone, even the taxpayers, if they have any questions related to any piece of this budget or our expenditures, please, I emphasize, reach out to my office. We will be more than happy to present any information to you as long as I'm allowed to do it, right? Because there's some...
Dr. Wadako, what the YouTube is behind, so you're not standing up there anymore, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I'm right here.
Is there any way that I could have Bonnie go to C16 and me give you an example of what's easy, I think, what transparency looks like?
Can we go back, before we go there, can I just finish this piece here? I don't know how to get to...
I thought you were done, I'm sorry.
No, I don't know how to, I want to click this on. Thank you. And here is our financial transparency page. This is really linked to the business affairs, but it's up here, as you can see, financial transparency. And then, of course, I should have just gone to the regular website, so you can see it, but it is up there. I will make sure it's a tab upstairs, up on the top as well. But if you scroll down a little bit, you can see all of the different areas that we do have. You've got, the TRIM, the monthly financial reports, TRIM, your budget presentation, value added, this is statutorily required, our internal audit report specifically for the schools, our charter schools, our annual financial report, and as you're clicking all these, the audits are in there, everything is in there. So again, I will make sure that that link is up on the main page so that everyone can go directly to this page and see all of the financial reports. And what else? That's it. The end.
I will point out, Dr. Levitko, if you'll scroll up where it says financial transparency report and click there.
Right there?
Uh-huh.
Up at the top?
No, right where she's clicking.
Oh, wow.
So if you can look at it by each school, and then to answer your question, Beth, there's general administrative expenditures over total operating expenditures. Also, it speaks to FTE per administrative personnel. So it gives you how much we're spending on instructional versus administrative on that page. By school, now I'm not sure, can you look at district office, or is that just individual schools?
I think you can see the general administrative, I don't know if you can scroll over, but you can also, I think there's also the report where it shows it from the district perspective. Oh, that's just the graphs.
It does have, it says 40 pages here, so
Yeah.
it's more than just what we're seeing.
Yeah, and you can click on the individual school, I believe, up here. I'm not sure, we can, these are the different fiscal years, but I believe you can, I don't know if you click up here.
You can also change it down at the bottom, Ms. Honora. Excuse me. Down at the bottom where you see that grayscale, you can even change the view if you'd rather see it in a bar graph. I think that, to me, that one's easier to read, all the way to the left. See at the bottom where it's in gray?
Right here?
If you click right there.
Right there?
No.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
There, it switches it to,
Yeah, and it shows the instructional, general administrative for that particular, I think you can also click for the specific schools.
so this one shows you specific dollar amounts, I believe, where the other is percentages. So just depending on how your brain works to understand the data, I think these are helpful. But what I didn't see is if there's an option where you can look at the district administrations, or if it's just school.
The school type.
The school types are just virtual, junior,
Oh, it did.
senior, elementary, charter. Then there's one that says NA. I don't know if maybe that would cover it. Let me look.
Yeah, because there's usually a summary page that shows indirect, direct.
I think if you put in the NA, that's where you get the totals. So you have total operating expenditures per FTE, total instructional, administrative. I think it's all there. I think that one gives you kind of the overview of the whole district instead of just by school. If you take out virtual academy, there you go. And like you can see in 2020, 2021, there's a big increase that year.
And this information comes from the state. Once the final report, we just received the 22, 23 data that we will be uploading in here to reflect that information. Oh, it is there already? Oh, yeah, it is there, 22, 23, 23, 24, 20, right. So, yeah, we just received that, so it updated it. I'm sorry. I knew I said. Well, that was the last piece of my presentation where I think Ms. Hanson.
So Madam Chair, if I could, I actually agree with Ms. Hanson that perhaps it's a communication, challenge. I think that we're all saying the same thing, but differently, or want to see something different. So if I can propose the fact that we should work on the transparency piece of that, perhaps, and show board members what that's going to look like when that's done, so that they can see that, and what improvements they want in the transparency. We can certainly entertain those additional revamps to it. I mean, there's a lot of information that's there. Maybe it's not packaged the way you want it packaged, or maybe it can't be packaged a different way depending on the program. But we can certainly work to improve that way and move forward there. I think the last question was the question to go back on the internal auditor piece of that. So I'd like to hear board discussion on that, and if the board is inclined that they want to move forward with that, I would make the recommendation that the board, put it out for RFP in order to get a professional firm that does that the board hires, and not just anybody related to that. But that's if the board is going to move in that direction. That would be my 2 cents worth, is put it out for RFP, state the scope of work, and also hire a professional firm if you're choosing that does that kind of work, so a professional is doing it.
You don't want me doing it?
Not a random person. Okay, so I don't know how you want to have that, because it seems like that's the last piece of this meeting, just to bring the meeting forward.
So I think Ms. Skipper and Ms. Hanson have both made their opinions very clear. My only request is that I would like to know upfront what the going rate is for that position in the state, and what other districts are doing and what it looks like. I want to know the structure, I want to know the cost, I want to know the benefits, as well as any hurdles that they've overcome or encountered if they haven't overcome them yet. And I don't know if that's something that you guys would want me as the board chair to reach out to other counties and ask for, or if that's something that through HR we could get that information. I'm not sure what the appropriate route. I know when we were looking to hire an attorney, Ms. Trotman and her department handled that, so I don't know if that's something that you guys would handle for us again, or what the board would prefer for that.
Provide us a list of questions that you want answered.
So I guess cost for me, but I mean, as far as like the benefits and all that stuff, we've learned this at alternative seminars and all that stuff, so the education piece, I personally already know. But I mean, for your benefit, you can put it in an email and send it out to all of us.
I'd like to know some of the other districts that have internal auditors, so that we can talk with them to determine what those auditors, how much those auditors are being used. Because I'm looking at us, yes, we're nearing that $500 million mark. However, we're not there quite yet, and we have the time at this point to be able to do a lot of research as to whether that would be, what type of auditor we want, how we get that, how they
I
got
just want to make
theirs.
sure this is a position that we are responsible for.
Correct.
For job description, for
everything,
management,
yes.
all of it. So I want to make sure that we're clear as a board in understanding what our expectations are, and that we utilize that position effectively.
That's my biggest concern, that we are utilizing them. Because I feel that you've done a remarkable job.
Well, I mean, we know that if it's at the 500 mark, we know both St. John's and Duval would have to have one. But as someone who is in accounting, not nursing, for many, many years, a good auditor is going to make up their money in what they discover. So I feel good about that part of it. And as you said, let's see what the other counties that have it, you know, what the benefits
I'd like to know that,
for having them.
So
Can I share some information on salaries with the board?
Sure.
So the average salary for school internal auditors across the nation, and this will be the mean average, was $81,000. That's about the cost of a school administrator. If you consider Florida, there's a range. There's a range with a pay scale in Florida, and this is an April 2024 site. It's a pay scale research site, that the median range is about $65,524. I'm not sure how much the allocation for that new position that I can't remember, I guess, how much money we were going to pay that internal accounts manager, but the salaries that I've looked at are very reasonable for what they do. Like Ms. Clark said, they actually make up their worth right away in what they find. And that's because internal auditors conduct and evaluate enhanced internal controls and risk management processes. In a district our size, and I think this will help answer Ms. Bola's question, and I think Dr. Leducco can also help answer your question about what internal auditors do. With enhancing internal controls, risk management, maybe they spend a lot of their time on internal accounts, which is, according to the last advanced finance forum I went to, the biggest area for fraud is our internal accounts. Having someone manage those 60 how many internal accounts, I don't even know what we have, but that alone is a full-time job. Internal accountants also work on operation efficiencies. So there is probably more work than one person could do. I know you do not need a firm, you just need a position or an allocation. So I just wanted to share that with you, and that's about all I have right now.
Well, I think just like with the attorney, we can go either way, so whatever we find. But whatever pay you're looking at, remember, to compare apples to apples, you have to add another 35-36% in all your benefits. So, you know, that's what we're really looking at.
Well, that, and we have to be, looking, I would like to know specifically what do Duval and St. John's pay there?
Right.
Because that's really our region and what we would expect to expend on that. So if we could just have that information.
So let's make sure that we get the questions.
Yes.
Correct. Kelly, what are the questions?
The questions, what are the hurdles? What is the structure? What is the cost? What districts use them, and what are the benefits? Are there others?
Any other questions you guys needed answered?
What do you mean by structure? We know that it reports to the board. So what do you mean by structure?
Well,
Many districts hire a firm rather than an individual person. This way it can be contracted out to a group of experts reporting.
But do we need a group of experts?
Well, we need,
To address board concerns?
we need a job description.
Right, well, for me, that would
Could be
be
a-
something
be a
that we
scope
would
of
want
work.
to consider. What's the advantage to having a firm versus hiring an individual? So if you have a firm, obviously they don't, or they may have an office. Like, we have a firm now, but they have an office and they're here daily. So that's what I mean by structure. Those are things that we need to iron out as a board as far as what our expectations are. And some of that will come with whoever applies for the job, obviously, because that evolved when we went through attorney interviews as well.
And that's, well, and, sorry, I was thinking and listening, sorry.
Are we overcomplicating it?
That, I was just going to say, if we depend, and it depends, depending on the position that we're looking at, and the cost, et cetera, and the need, as we look at the job description, I mean, granted, our $500 million budget is much different than the $1 billion budget north of us.
Right.
And an internal auditor in the $1 billion budget is going to make loads of money for that, and obviously pay for their position. But to begin with, instead of making a position per se, contracting out for an internal auditor to work with us a certain amount of time or a certain number of
Times per year?
times per year, as we see what our needs are, that's going to be, that can be much, much different.
And that's what I meant by structure. I don't know what other districts are doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think once we talk to the other two that are close to us, we'll have a lot more questions. We'll know which direction.
Any other questions that you would like to be included?
Kelly's the key for the questions. I'm relying on her.
Ms. Hanson, is there anything else that you wanted? I have a couple of budget questions from
Sure.
Ms. Kidwell, so.
Well, as for anything else, I just want to, when you research as a board right now, you go home and look at this internal auditor thing, try not to overcomplicate it. It is a person that spends all their time making sure we're being as good as we can, as safe as we can, procedurally sound as we can. They are a risk management position as well. The internal auditor, I can't understand how they would ever be a firm, and they report to the board, and they might say things like, you could save $1 million if you stop making copies at the district office. This is a person that looks for ways for us to improve and stretch our dollar and to make sure it's safe as we do it. So it's not, I have a hard time wrapping my head around the firm because it's actually, if you research it, you'll see it's much simpler than that. I guess that's all I wanted to add.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Kidwell?
Through the chair, Dr. Ledutko, I just had a couple questions on page 17, where you have the, historically, you've got expenditures by object 22, 23, and then by object 23, 24. I was just wanting to ask about if you could provide some detail about the salaries and benefits column there. It appears, by the way the graph looks to me, to actually go down. Could you explain that?
Go down.
Well,
For one thing, 23, 24 is not complete. We still have several payrolls to complete before the end of the year. So that is why your salaries and benefits may be just equal or a little above the prior year.
And the graph is different.
Your numbers are different on 23, 24. It's in increments of 50,000, or 50 million, I'm sorry. So it's quite a bit under, but, so you're saying that's because we're not done with the year yet?
We're not finished with the year. We still have about, how many payrolls? We have 6 in June. And seven more payrolls? 6. We have 6 more payrolls to complete. So like I said during the presentation, these numbers will change, and we're now paying out our contracts and everything between now and probably the 1st or 2nd week of July of next year.
Thank you for that clarity. And then on page 23, the Clay County Sheriff's Office cost per officer per school.
Yes.
That 170,000 and change, Is that because of the transition, and is that what we expect it to be going forward? And why is it so different than what we're paying Orange Park Police Department or Green Cove Springs per officer?
For one thing, excuse me, this cost does not include the transition. That was a separate check that was sent to the sheriff's office. I'm sorry, my throat just decided to go belly up or something. I ate a lot this weekend. No, I'm teasing. I did not. I spent it on this. And also the difference is the number of officers that are being served, and the contracts are totally different from the current contract that we will be going into. I'm sorry.
So it says cost of officer per school, so it's not 170,000 per officer, is it?
Per school site.
Per school site,
Per school site,
yes.
okay.
The average cost per officer is somewhere between $115 and $135 across the state.
All right, do we have any other questions? Any further business?
Nope.
Okay. Mr. Blocker.
Oh, Mr. Just very briefly, we have the upcoming meeting. We do have, I believe, Madam Chair, you'll be absent. I believe Vice Chair will be absent as well. So per your board rules, going off that, what we'll want to do at that board meeting is we'll want to have a quick nomination and a second for a pro temp chair, so we'll just do that very quickly. Y'all can be thinking about who you want to nominate, but we'll have the official vote right then and there. Some boards kind of do it by seniority, but y'all's rules kind of leave it a little open-ended, so we'll just have a quick vote and go from there. If board members are going to call in, we would still go through this process because you want to have the actual conductor, runner of the meeting, so to speak, will be present. If Mrs. Gilhousen and Mrs. Bull are not able to be present virtually, then that will mean every agenda item will need to have a 3-0 vote. So it'll have to be unanimous. We can cover down.
Just out of curiosity, the superintendent can't step in as a secretary?
I don't believe so. I mean, do you?
I don't think so either, but technically he's the secretary of the board. That's what I was curious. What meeting is this for?
So this is upcoming.
The end of June.
I'm sorry, end of June.
Not this coming board meeting, but the one at the end of the month, it's technically our July meeting.
June 26th or whatever it is.
And then just very briefly, I asked one of my colleagues to come, Lisa Miles, so I'm going to let her introduce her, but Lisa will be helping us with the truancy as we're standing that up. So we've had some meetings with the state attorney's office that Lisa's been handling, and we're meeting with the chief judge as well, so I'll just let Lisa introduce herself briefly.
Sure. Again, my name is Lisa Miles. I am born and raised in St. Augustine, Florida. I'm a former prosecutor. Although I'm from St. Augustine, I'm real happy to be here with y'all in Clay County. It has been absolutely lovely meeting you guys, and I'm just so impressed with how hard each and every one of you work, and I look forward to working with all of you.
Absolutely, great. So are there any questions? And I'll be updating each of y'all on, the sheriff's contract as we go forward, so hopefully we'll have a few more updates before the meeting, so thank you.
Mr. Superintendent, I skipped you. Did you have anything you needed to add?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Anything from the rest of the board?
Well, I do have, that Gator Cup's gotta go.
Beautiful. Yes, Ms. Hanson.
I just wanted to say that I have not served on the Revenue Adjustment Board for very long, but I enjoy the meetings, and so if I get put into the board, I would not mind continuing in that position. I haven't even had it for a full year.
Yeah, that's fine. Is that okay with everyone else? Yeah, we can keep that assignment as is.
Okay, that's great.
Thank you for your willingness to serve, Ms. Hanson.
What was the other one we had?
The FSBA.
Oh.
Yeah. Do we want to decide that now, or do you guys want to wait till the board meeting?
I've been.
How much work is involved in that?
Not very little. There's a legislative agenda sort of group, and then there's the advocacy group. And pretty much, If you choose to be very involved in the legislative side of it, then there's a Friday morning update, and it's available to anyone, a Friday morning update to the legislative session only during the legislative session. There's no required attendance or anything. It's just the opportunity for folks to become more involved with the legislative branch in that respect. And if you're interested in the legislation and what's happening in Tallahassee, I think it's an excellent opportunity to just stay informed, if nothing else. I will be stepping down from that position. I won't be volunteering this year.
Okay. So then,
Ms. Gilligan, I actively go to all the FSBA meetings. I won't attend the June one, but I've been to all the rest of them, and I became a certified board member through them. So if no one else wants it, since I'm going to be at the meetings, and maybe others don't want to attend the meetings, as long as no one else wants it, then I could take that too, because I don't have any other committees.
okay, anybody have an objection to that? Then we'll do that, Ms. Hanson,
You'll need an
thank you.
alternate as well.
And a
citizen
for the value
That's correct. So, would anybody like to be the alternate? I can be the alternate if not.
Sounds perfect.
Okay.
And Ms. Bola, can you get with me and show me links and what to expect maybe?
Just go on the FSBA website. It's
And
pretty
then,
much, once they know that you're the representative, they also reach out to you.
Ms. Hanson,
Okay.
who is currently the citizen on the Value Adjustment Board with you?
I don't, no one's been there with me.
Joe Wiggins? Okay.
I think we ought
Oh, I know the man.
Joe Wiggins.
He's from,
Joe
there was another guy there though, he's from Fleming Island. He's a civilian participant.
That could be,
He was the last one, and I'm not sure of his name because I'm not at home, I'm in Illinois.
that could be the person from the BCC, because I believe they have one as well.
So, Ms. Hanson, if you don't mind reaching out to the current person who serves with you and just ensure that they're okay to stay, or if there's somebody else that you'd like to bring forward,
Okay.
and have that for our June meeting.
I'll do it, thank you.
All right, thanks so much. All right, is there anything further? All right, this meeting is adjourned.
Yes, ma'am.